Clap, 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 clap your hands. Clap, 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 clap your hands. How low can you go? Can you go down low? How low can you go? Can you take it to the floor? How low can you go? Can you go down low? How low can you go? Can you take it to the floor? Slide to the left. Slide to the right. Reverse. Reverse. Everybody clap your hands.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Yes, welcome back. I know I wasn't here Sunday. I took Sunday off. I was actually hanging out with, I've had friends, family things going on. So it would have been crazy for me to try to stream on Sunday. So that being said, we have a huge show tonight because I missed Sunday. There's so much to discuss. But welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And I am back. Guess who's back? Back again. Sabby's back. Tell a friend. And I am in a silly, fun mood. We got so much to discuss tonight. I want to start out by giving shout outs to people in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and dive right in. What's going on, Jin Ho? The allegations of pedophilia, assault perpetrated by Russell Brand are credible. Over 3 months in 2006, Brand groomed and assaulted a 16-year-old girl. Brand was 31. We'll get into that. Shout out to duly noted AOC's attendance anywhere but getting me a beer is a joke. Okay, don't forget to respond to that poll. Shout out to Craig. Brand shut down already to monetize the real world consequence of being demonized by the Supreme Court of YouTube. YouTube, judge, jury, executioner of one social credit account on all fronts. Shout out to JB, my comrade, says, hello, everyone. Forehead kisses. Greetings, Tony says, hello, comrades. And Tony, I don't know why I said it that way, but it just came out that way. Shout out to Lee says, in the title, when you say Obama, Libya, GAFFE, do you mean he has a home there? GAFFE is UK slang for a home. Perhaps you meant GAFFE by mistake. Yes, and I saw this comment right before I went live, so I was able to change that thumbnail really quick. Thank you so much for calling that out, Lee. Shout out to Jan says, from everything I've seen, the climate rally in DC is a DNC funded event. We'll get into that. Greetings, Hannah G says, I'm glad you're back, Sabby. Shout out to Terry says, hello, Sabby and chat. What's going on? Lorez says, hi, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Russell accused now because he's exposing the establishment. Obama is such a disgrace. AOC is a hypocrite to not call out Dems who are anti-climate. Smash the like, y'all. Greetings, Roger Meadows, who's a Sabby member, says, don't forget West Virginia BIs. West Virginia will have to go to Thursday. Shout out to, Casey said, solidarity and fire. Greetings, Anthony sends a smile. Shout out to Red, says, hello, Sabby. Greetings, Gamer, says, hello. Shout out to Desert Mantis, Gamer for Life. Did I miss any action? Not sure what action you're talking about there, Desert Mantis. Shout out to Mark, says, Sabby, knowing what you know now, would you have invited Judas to the Last Supper? I don't know what you're talking about, Mark. I don't know what you mean. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, big show. Here we go. Greetings, Katrina. Looks like she's dancing. Shout out to Brent Hudgens, says, low, low, low. Yeah, that's my song. Lou says, wait, what am I hearing? Shout out to Kimmy, says, cha cha, Miss Sabby. Greetings, Carrie says, if we get U.S. citizen-owned utilities and resources, we can end poverty and fix reparations now. That is correct. Greetings, QB Socialista. Don't care one way or the other. Shout out to Rick, says, hey, y'all. What's going on? Janice says, hi, everyone. Greetings, Danny says, Jink went on another unhinged rant with Bree. Yes, he did. Shout out to Randy, says, good evening, gamer and Sabby comrades. Shout out to Lana, says, hiya, Sabby. Greetings, Raul, says, hi, Sabby. What's going on? GG says, let's go. Charge. Shout out to Michael, says, doobie doobie doo. And greetings, Pizza the Hut. Doobie doobie doo. Let's go ahead and get in because we have a lot to discuss tonight since I did miss Sunday. Don't forget to take that poll. We'll reveal that later, and we will do call in tonight. I'm pretty sure you guys definitely, if anything, want to talk about the Russell Brand situation. So we'll get into that later on tonight. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and shout out all those wonderful Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. You're helping me out a lot here. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies. They're the meaty bunch right there. If everybody else is the bread, tomato, and the lettuce, the cheese, mayo, if you like mayo, the Sabbies tends to be the meat members as well. Thank you guys so much. And I want to give a special shout out here to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for, there's a lot of them today. Terry Cobb, Jennifer Lewis, Cindy Erdenola, Decrepit Progressive, that's an interesting name, Daniel Lagacy, Michael Francis, Catherine Chappelle, Mayor Peter, and Chris G. I sincerely, this is not the Mayor Pete we're thinking of, I'm sure. I am pretty sure this is not that Mayor Pete. But welcome and thank you all so much. Really do appreciate all of your support there. I also have 2 announcements tonight, too, that I will discuss later on, and we'll get into that as well. Let's go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail there for you guys. How low can you go? Can you go down low? See, the cha-cha side is stuck in my head. Actually, the artist who wrote that song is actually passed away recently, which is unfortunate. I've heard that song at so many weddings. Okay, tonight we are discussing Russell Brand accused, and I made this stream before I found out the news today, so we're going to add accused and now demonetized. We're going to get into that story. I'm also going to discuss Obama-Libya gaffe. We're also discussing BRIAHNA Joy Gray versus Jink Uger. Oh, Jink looks so angry in that picture. He's not trying to hear it. Is he telling the truth? I don't think so. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss Trump and Megyn Kelly interview there. I have a couple of pieces in that interview I do want to touch on that I think is important. And last but not least, we're going to discuss this AOC climate rally upset. Yes, some people are not happy that AOC chose to show her face at that climate rally. We're going to get into all that, some of the organizations that were involved, the speakers as well, where some of the money man came from. We'll get into all of that tonight. But first and foremost, I want to get started with this story about Barack Obama. So we're going to start with the video. Then we'll get into the current situation. I want to take you back to a debate between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney when Obama was running for re-election, just to remind you of the situation that had taken place in Libya and the scrutiny that Obama received because of it. And I'll tell you why that's important with his current statement. Let's go ahead and dive into this clip here.
Closing in, I want to still get a lot of people in. I want to ask you something, Mr. President, and then have the governor just quickly. Your Secretary of State, as I'm sure you know, has said that she takes full responsibility for the attack on the diplomatic mission in Benghazi. Does the buck stop with your Secretary of State as far as what went on here?
Secretary Clinton has done an extraordinary job, but she works for me. I'm the president, and I'm always responsible. And that's why nobody's more interested in finding out exactly what happened than I did. The day after the attack, Governor, I stood in the Rose Garden and I told the American people and the world that we were going to find out exactly what happened, that this was an act of terror, and I also said that we're going to hunt down those who committed this crime. And then a few days later, I was there greeting the caskets coming into Andrews Air Force Base and grieving with the families. And the suggestion that anybody in my team, whether the Secretary of State, our UN ambassador, anybody on my team would play politics or mislead when we've lost 4 of our own, Governor, is offensive.
Losing 4 of your own compared to the civilian casualties in Libya is not, I don't even think you should make that comparison. The number of civilian casualties in Libya, when we always say that Obama like bombed brown people abroad and we're talking about Libya, it doesn't even add up. Not a good comparison.
That's not what we do. That's not what I do as president. That's not what I do as commander-in-chief.
Governor, if you want to reply quickly to this, please.
I certainly do. I think it's interesting. The president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went in the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror. That's what I said. You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror.
I beg your pardon. I never promised you a rose garden.
It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror. It did as well take 2 weeks or so for the whole idea of there being a riot out there about this tape to come out. You're correct about that.
The administration indicated that this was a reaction to a video and was a spontaneous reaction.
They did.
It took them a long time to say this was a terrorist act by a terrorist group. And to suggest, am I incorrect in that regard? On Sunday, your secretary, the ambassador of the United Nations went on the Sunday television shows and spoke about how this was a spontaneous reaction.
We're going to go ahead and stop it there. I wanted to show this clip just to jog your memory. Number one, that Obama, the situation that happened in Libya, Benghazi in particular, was a hot button item going into that re-election campaign. And then also, I want to remind you that Mitt Romney was a weak candidate, stumbling over his words, very nervous, just a very weak candidate. Look, he was my governor in Massachusetts at one point in time. So I have plenty of room to criticize Mitt Romney. Now, I played that video because there was a recent statement given by Barack Obama about Libya in particular that sounds a little bit hypocritical considering his administration's actions in Libya. And that was this statement here on Twitter. Barack Obama said, "If you're looking to help people impacted by the floods in Libya, check out these organizations providing relief." So Libya did recently have a flood, and you'll see a picture here of the flood. And he was actually telling people to check out the Obama Foundation, of course, right? Like he would recommend his own foundation, of course. Bragging rights there for Barack Obama, apparently. But it's so hypocritical because now all of a sudden you pretend to care about the people in Libya, but you wouldn't care about those people in Libya when you were bombing them. And we'll get into the implications of the U.S. intervention in Libya and what that caused later on in just a second. But the hypocrisy is hilarious to see. So a lot of people have been criticizing him over this recent statement, including Nico House. Now, Nico has been doing these videos on Hotspot. Him and Nick are doing these. They're really good at these, by the way. Some people are good at this TikTok style kind of thing. I am not one of them. I'll just let you know. I'm not one of them. I want you to hear what Nico had to say, because Nico also criticized the hypocrisy of Obama even making that statement of wanting to so-called care about people in Libya now.
So some idiot journalist woke up in the morning, decided to take a sip of coffee, and thought to himself, you know, it seems like a good day to tell a lie about what happened in Libya. So this columnist for the Washington Post had the audacity to say that the catastrophe in Libya was everyone's fault. And I'm here to tell you, he's full of shit. Like, porta potty fixed right in between the taco truck and the coffee stand at Coachella levels of full of shit. First of all, the ongoing catastrophe in Libya is happening solely because of the US and NATO working to assassinate this man, the former leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi. In 2011, the US and NATO powers decided to kill Gaddafi because they claimed that he was bombing his own people and what.
Yes, this piece right here is very important. Remember, at that point in time, we only received the narrative from the mainstream media. As time went by, we started to discover that some of these things that were being told to us it wasn't really the complete story, right? So again, this was another example of the US government telling you this person is destroying their own people. So there's a cause and a reason for us to intervene. Just hold on to that button for just a second, because we're going to talk about what happened after.
To kill Gaddafi because they claimed that he was bombing his own people and what let them decide their own destiny, which of course, once again, is a lie. Let's start with the Gold Dinar Initiative. In 2009, Gaddafi met with the African Union, which he was currently president of, and proposed a plan where they used gold and oil-backed currency so that they would not have to purchase oil from America in any capacity going forward. Had Gaddafi not been assassinated, this would have likely come into fruition because he was extremely popular across the African continent. And he was beloved by Libyans and Africans everywhere because he instituted popular policies like free water, almost totally free gasoline, and even free healthcare and education.
This is very similar to what happened to Imran Khan, right? This is someone that is beloved by his constituents in Pakistan. I interviewed his friend a couple of weeks ago to talk about what happened and the conditions that Imran Khan is dealing with right now in prison. The U.S. government intervened because Imran Khan refused to take a position in reference to the Ukraine war. He wanted to remain neutral. So they did what they do best. They pushed the Pakistani government to remove Imran Khan from office and to imprison him. And that's where he sits right now, in prison, in horrifying conditions, according to his friend that I just spoke to recently. So I just want to remind you, this was another example of the U.S. government forcefully trying to either remove or execute a leader of another country that they said were harming their own people, but you come to find out they were actually popular with the people of that country.
In addition to all of those popular policies, he also virtually eliminated jihadism in Libya. Through the release of Hillary Clinton's emails, we found out that the US and NATO figured out about the plan for the Gold Dinar and decided to do something about it. Coincidentally, once the US discovered this plan, rebels from Chad, a country that was mostly controlled by NATO, and the country bordering Libya, end up wreaking havoc in Libya, and of course Gaddafi was forced to defend his country. And that was the excuse NATO needed to claim that Gaddafi was bombing his own people, as they then proceeded to bomb Libya for 8 straight months. And NATO said that they had to bomb Libya and assassinate Gaddafi because it was a humanitarian crisis. But what actually happened is jihadism ran rampant after Gaddafi died, and open market slavery was brought back to Libya. And the US, France, NATO, and everyone involved in the assassination of Gaddafi have had zero to say about it. So no, the Libya disaster wasn't everyone's fault. It was the fault of the same people who caused most of the problems in socioeconomic disasters around the world.
Well said there from Nico. And I want to get into this first claim here about Africa. And what a lot of people may not have known is that Gaddafi actually wanted to unite Africa. So this was another no, according to the U.S. government. We can build United States of Africa, Gaddafi says. Now, this was reported 2010. And there's Gaddafi there. And I want to jump to this part right here. Gaddafi has been pushing for an African unity government for years, saying it is the only way Africa can develop without Western interference. But many African states say the idea is impractical or would encroach on their sovereignty. So they were hesitant to agree with it because they were afraid of what would happen, long story short. But Gaddafi was trying to push Africa to not have to depend on the West. Right. And what do we see now? We see Niger rose up. Different countries are pushing back against, Western interference and Western imperialism. We're seeing it. People are more loud about it now. And I think people are a little bit more courageous now. But I want to remind you, because a lot of times when you hear mainstream media talk about Gaddafi, they just say he was going to try to execute his own people and da-da-da. And they particularly leave this part out, which I think is really important. Like previous African summits, this week's gathering in Ugandan capital, Kampala, discussed steps towards creating an African government. But the issue was overshadowed by chaos in Somalia and an international arrest warrant for Sudan's president. And I want to highlight Sudan here for a second, because what's happening right now in Sudan? Now you see there's conflict in Sudan. I told you before, we'll still continue to keep an eye on it because I believe that could be the next proxy war. So we have to, all of these things are connected. And this is why sometimes I like to go back and look at a little bit of history so that we can remember how we got here. Now, even Barack Obama himself later on said the biggest disappointment of his presidency was Libya. Imagine that. Now, this was actually reported from The Guardian. Barack Obama says Libya was the worst mistake of his presidency. Barack Obama has said the biggest mistake of his presidency was the lack of planning for the aftermath of Gaddafi's ouster in Libya that left the country spiraling into chaos and coming under threat from violent extremists. Let's highlight violent extremists. We'll come back to that. Reflecting on his legacy in a Fox News interview aired on Sunday, Obama said his worst mistake was probably failing to plan for the day after what I think was the right thing to do in intervening in Libya. It was not the right thing to do. Obama has conceded that the intervention didn't work. The president has tried to apply this lesson in considering the use of military in other circumstances. That asking the question about what situation will prevail and what sort of commitments from the international community will be required after the military intervention has been ordered by the commander in chief. Now, let's go right back up here to the highlighted violent extremists, because I want to give you another example. If we remember when the U.S. government overthrew Saddam Hussein, what happened after? That gave rise to ISIS. So there's many criticisms of Saddam Hussein that we can make. Yes, his people were not too happy with him. Yes, he was a dictator. We can make all those criticisms. However, it is not the U.S. government's authority to remove leaders from other countries. Imagine if Germany woke up one day and said, we're removing your president. Actually, some people would be happy about that. Some people would be happy, like, yay, Biden's gone. But then they choose who comes in next, or they don't choose who comes in next. And then it gives rise to more extremist groups. So when they removed Saddam Hussein, that gave rise to ISIS. When Saddam Hussein was in power, he was able to keep some of those extremist groups in check. When you take out the leader of a country that you don't live in, that you don't really know about, people can run amok, and that's what happened. You would have thought the U.S. government would have learned from that removal of Saddam Hussein, but they did not. They continue to do this till this day. That decision by Barack Obama's administration left Libya in turmoil, including it also gave way to the Libyan slave trade, which a lot of people don't want to talk about this. Obama blamed for Libyan slave trade as shocking video goes viral. So I want to remind everybody, we are going back. We are going back. I'll make this bigger because the text is tiny on here. I don't know what that's all about. Former President Barack Obama has come under criticism after a series of videos showing men and women being sold in a renewed slave trade has gone viral in recent weeks. Some critics have begun questioning how much the Obama administration contributed to the problem with its 2011 intervention in Libya. Obama has acknowledged this issue before calling it the worst mistake of his presidency. But as videos showing humans being sold into slavery shocks people around the world, the scrutiny has been renewed. And I want to remind everybody, never forget that. There was a video, and I still remember this to this day. Now, this was posted 5 years ago on YouTube, and CNN covered it. And I was actually shocked that they did. Migrants being sold as slaves in Libya. Just to remind you what happens when there's U.S. intervention.
A man addressing an unseen crowd. Big strong boys for farm work, he says. 400. 700. 700? 800. The numbers roll in. These men are sold for 1,200 Libyan pounds, $400 apiece. You are watching an auction of human beings. Another man, claiming to be a buyer. Off camera, someone asks, what happened to the ones from Niger?
I wanted you to hear that part. You hear what they just said? What happened to the ones from Niger?
Sold off, he's told. CNN was sent this footage by a contact. After months of working, we were able to verify the authenticity of what you see here. We decided to travel to Libya to try and see for ourselves. We're now in Tripoli and we're starting to get a little bit more of a sense of how this all works. Our contacts are telling us that there are 1 to 2 of these auctions every month and that there is one happening in the next few hours. So we're going to head out of town and see if we can get some sort of access to it. For the safety of our contacts, we have agreed not to divulge the location of this auction, but the town we're driving to isn't the only one. Night falls. We travel through nondescript suburban neighborhoods, pretending to look for a missing person.
We'll just scoot up here to a little bit faster so you can see.
And we're asked to leave. That was over very quickly. We walked in, and as soon as we walked in, the men started covering their faces, but they clearly wanted to finish what they were doing, and they kept bringing out what they kept referring to in Arabic as al-budaa, the merchandise. All in all, they admitted to us that there were 12 Nigerians that were sold in front of us. And I honestly don't know what to say. That was probably one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen.
And we'll fast forward a little bit here.
Have a sit near place. Have a sit near place.
They come in their thousands from Niger, Mali, Nigeria, Ghana. It's hard to believe that these are the lucky ones, rescued from warehouses like the one in which we witnessed the auction. They're sold if those warehouses become overcrowded or if they run out of money to pay their smugglers. Of these rescued men, so many here say they were held against their will. It doesn't take us long to find victory.
Just take us home. No food, no water. Just take us home. Want to go? No food, no water, nothing.
Victory was a slave. We know that some people are being sold.
Yes.
Some people are being sold. Is this
Yes.
something you've heard about? Can you tell us about
Sure.
that? Tell us.
I was sold.
What happened?
On my way coming, I was sold. Merciless beating. If you look at most of the people here, if you check their body, you see the mark. They're beating with electric. Even your boot, or they took something like a sharp object. Understand? Most of them lost their life there. I was there. The person who came to buy me give the man money. They take me out home. So the money was not even much.
Other migrants now start to come forward with their stories.
They took people to work by force. Even when we are at the seaside, when we are working the work, they will be beating you. When you are working the work, I'm doing your work. They will be maltreating us.
Just wanted to remind you of that. Barack Obama has blood on his hands. So when I hear Barack Obama say, if you want to help the people in Libya, nah, you hurt the people in Libya. By the way, again, like I said, if the US government had not intervened, they would have not been in this situation. The people in those countries, it's not just Libya, but the people in those countries are often worse off after US intervention than they were before. So Barack Obama, like, really, you can miss me with all of this. All of this, if you're looking to help people impacted by the floods in Libya, check out these organizations. And then to have the audacity, the organization that he recommends is his own damn foundation. So he can miss me with all of that. People should not be giving him kudos or applause. Like, this is a no-no. That's why I called it the Obama Libya gaffe. You got to have some type of balls to post that after what you did. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Bad Cookies says, what's up to Sean Miller? I'm selling bootleg Sabby gear, Sabby dabs. That's funny. JB says, it's crazy how a black man caused slavery to return to an African country. That's sick, to be honest. Shame on Obama. Barack Obama's brother, this guy says he's his brother, Malik Obama, he's on Twitter. He talks about Obama all the time in a negative way. Thank you for the super chat, Black Thoughts. Time to offer more democracy to Libya. Exactly. Exactly. This is why I continue to say that foreign policy is important. And I don't understand this whole mindset of, let's just talk about what's happening here. Let's just focus on America. Nah, it's all connected, boo. It's all connected. So we have to know what's happening abroad. All right. We're going to move on to our next story here, which is actual domestic story. So there was a huge protest in New York City over the weekend. It was called the Climate March in New York City. Over 50,000 people were present at this march. I couldn't believe my eyes myself. I participated in numerous marches and protests, and I've covered them as well. And aside from George Floyd, all of the other rallies, like, I wish we had 50,000 people show up at those rallies. I really wish. I wish we had 50,000 people show up at the anti-war rallies. I really do. But over 50,000 people showed up. Apparently, multiple different organizations put this rally together. We're going to get into some of the pros. We're going to get into some of the cons. Because apparently AOC was one of the speakers at this rally. And I have an update about that too, from someone who was a part of the organizing team to tell you about whether or not they wanted AOC to be there. So this is a whole thing that we're unraveling. But there were a number of people that were present. Cornel West was there. Susan Sarandon also spoke. Of course, Susan Sarandon, we'll get into that in a second, but I just want to say, like, she does not have to do any of this. Susan Sarandon is an actress. If she wants to, she can just kick back, just like most celebrities or actresses in Hollywood. But I think she lives in New York. She can just kick back and just live her lavish life. but she has been involved in multiple protests and rallies. She was a part of the Medicare for All marches we had in this country over 2 years ago. She's been arrested for protesting. So that's someone who really cares. Most of them don't. Let's keep it real. Most of them don't. But one of the speakers at this rally was Dr. Cornel West. I want to show you some of the speeches that happened. They're short. I think they had a limited amount of time. But we'll start off with the speech from Dr. West here, and then we'll get to some of the other appearances as well.
Be clear, let us not be deceived. We're here to fight organized greed. We want to end the fossil fuel industry. We want to end institutionalized indifference, and Rabbi Heschel is right. Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. So we're here to do what? Come together. People of faith. Bring our bodies, our hearts and minds together to make sure we send a message to the government. Both political parties need to know there's human beings in Cancer Alley. There's human beings who are victimized by Mountain Valley Project. There's human beings who are pipeline. There's human beings who are dealing with Willow Project.
So he's talking about the people that are affected because of the fossil fuel industry. Now, obviously, there's more to climate than just fossil fuels. We have to talk about the military industrial complex, which is the largest, most single polluter in the world. But these communities that have been just wrecked by the pipelines, we're talking about Line 3. We're talking about Standing Rock. We're talking about the people in Appalachia. We're talking about the Willow Project. There's indigenous communities there. And our government really does not care about these people. They don't care about poor, working class people. They damn sure don't care about indigenous people. They try to pretend like they don't exist. Flint, Michigan, same thing. You know, putting in these faulty pipelines, poisoning people with the water. That doesn't happen in Beverly Hills. Let's keep it real. That doesn't happen in these rich communities. That happens in poor, working class communities, and oftentimes communities of color. So we have to remember that. We have to remember they're poisoning the people.
And if there's one thing that brings us together as religious folk, because I come from a deep tradition that follows a Palestinian Jew named Jesus who ran out the money changers of the temple. That's why they put him on the cross, and he was killed by the Roman Empire. So we need to run out the fossil fuel profiteers out of what Martin Luther King Jr. called the world house. For what? To make sure that there's some air that we can breathe. To make sure that there's some communities that we can connect. And we understand it's not just fossil fuel. We're talking about a predatory capitalist processes that don't care about people, don't care about profits, and are obsessed with, don't care about people and are obsessed with profits. That's what I want to say. I'm trying to talk fast because I got 2.5 minutes and I'm used to 2 hours. But the important thing is that we keep the love at the center of it. Oh, yes. When Martin Buber said I, thou versus I, it. We treat each other like thou. We treat the earth like a thou, not a it. We don't manipulate. We don't dominate. We don't subjugate. You know, squeeze every ounce just for profit, even when we relate to each other and when we relate to the earth. So we don't come in the spirit of self-righteousness. We come in the spirit of not just acknowledging climate emergency. It's worse than that. It is climate catastrophe. And I come from a blues people, and the blues is all about jazz, lyrically expressed and honestly confronted and artistically transfigured. Strange fruit is the blues, that's catastrophe. The problem of our politicians, they think ecological catastrophe is just a problem because they have managerial mentality, something that they can get their hands around and come up with some incremental response as if we're not living on the edge of the cliff. This This is catastrophe. This is the blues all the way down. But we all are blues men and blues women because the response of catastrophe is to never allow it to have the last word. We have solidarity in the face of catastrophe. Let us march together. Let us fight together. Let us laugh together. Let us dance together. Let us smile together. Let us cry together. From our indigenous people all across the country and the world, yes, we will not allow the organized greed to have the last word. Love supreme or love supreme. It be clear.
Okay, so that was Dr. Cornel West's speech. And I also want to show you, because like I said, there were multiple speakers. Susan Sarandon was also a speaker there. Unfortunately, whoever got this, it was hard to find. They didn't get a long one with Susan Sarandon, but I do want to show you what I was able to find. So she's saying here, Biden in fossil fuels. And here we go.
Number one, as the largest oil and gas producer. We heard Obama brag about this, actually, about how much oil and gas he was producing, and accounts for 1/3 of all planned oil and gas expansions for the next few decades. Number one.
So that's something to remember there. What Susan Sarandon was just saying. Remember Obama, I forgot about that, but remember Barack Obama, he bragged about that, about how much oil was being produced. So that's why I told you, like, both parties are guilty of this when we talk about this. Now, we also have to remember, again, the indigenous communities, the ones that are being one of the groups that are being affected by the pipelines that have been happening in this country. So this gentleman here is indigenous, and I want you to hear what he had to say. He was at the rally as well.
Could you just tell me why you're here today?
Well, I'm here at the request of spiritual authorities within our indigenous network. They said that this United Nations Secretary General's Summit on Climate Ambition has no spiritual soul to it. That the world leaders have forgotten what the responsibility is to understand the sacredness of Mother Earth and Father Sky. So I'm here to defend that sacredness that we need to have talked about, that raises, that's a big quote. I got a big quote. And we're here to protect the rights of indigenous peoples. And we're here to resist the capitalization of the climate negotiations.
So this is something to remember. He said we're here to protect the rights of indigenous people. Isn't it crazy that in 2023, indigenous people still have to fight for their rights in this country? They're the people who are indigenous to the land. And they have to fight for rights in a country that was theirs. Still to this day. And now their communities are being poisoned.
Carbon market systems. And also the false promises being made with the experimentation of geoengineering technologies such as carbon capture and storage. And we're here to renew not only our relationship, but humanity's relationship to building sustainable communities based upon regenerative economy, living economy, not a fossil fuel economy. So that's my long quote.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jay. Remember Standing Rock. Exactly. Exactly. I remember protesters, indigenous protesters being, hit with those little the pellet guns. They were hitting them. The police were doing that. It's their land. And this is something we have to remember. Now, there has been criticism, of course. Can't have a rally without criticism. But one of the biggest critiques is the fact that AOC spoke at this rally. Now, we're going to get into the hypocrisy in reference to AOC being there. I personally don't think she should have spoken at that rally. I'll get into that in just a second. But she was there. Jamal Bowman was also there as well. We'll get into a little bit of the speech that she gave here and why people are crying, send her home, so to speak. Some people were not liking this.
That we organize out of hope. We organize out of commitment. We organize out of love. We organize out of the beauty of our future. And we will not give up. We will not let go. We will not allow cynicism to prevail. We will not allow our visions of a collaborative economy, of dignity for working people, of honoring the black, brown, indigenous, white working class. We will not give up. That we organize.
But you did give up. Listen to this.
Out of hope. We organize out of commitment. We organize out of love. We organize out of the beauty of our future. And we will not give up. We will not let go. We will not allow cynicism to prevail. We will not allow our visions of a collaborative economy, of dignity for working people, of honoring the black, brown, indigenous, white working class. We will not give up.
But she already did give up. She gave up when she endorsed Joe Biden. Joe Biden approved the Willow Project. Marianne doesn't approve the Willow Project. Cornel West doesn't approve the Willow Project. I'm not sure about RFK Jr., but knowing how he feels about the environment, he probably wouldn't approve of that. Do you see the problem? So it's great to get up there and grandstand and make these great speeches, but your actions mean more. And so you are endorsing and telling people to vote for the very person who does not support any of this, who lied to the American people, who lied to voters, who lied to particularly the Gen Z voters, and said that there will be no more drilling. No more drilling. So there's the endorsement. And then there's the way that she's voted in reference to legislation. Thank you so much for this, Benigma. Benigma says AOC voted for increased drilling on federal land. She's totally full of shit. This is why it's important that you follow how they move when it comes to legislation. How are they voting? Because anyone can give up there and give a speech. People can say a lot. Get them in front of a crowd. We can go up there and make it look real good. But what are you doing behind closed doors when it's time for you to vote? When it's time for you to endorse certain candidates that are against these very same things that you say are so important and critical to the American people? So a lot of people took issue with it. And people were like, why would they ask AOC to speak? But did they? This is coming from Christina. This is Christina for New Jersey. I believe Christina, I can go to her thing in a second, but I don't think she's Democrat or Republican. I think she's either independent or Green Party. Christina said AOC crashed our protest. We never wanted her there. They turned it from fossil fuel into a grift. So let me see who Christina, let me go just to make sure. Yeah, she's running third party. I thought so. I was just double checking just to make sure. She turned it into a grift, right? So Blue Moon comes here and says, lies, you cannot crash in such an elaborate manner. All the well-meaning Greens need to take a hard look at themselves as controlled opposition right now. Christina goes on to say, my point is that I left. It turned into a grift, not truly about fossil fuel. Hey, if you want to host a protest, I'll come support you. Lucy goes on to say, if you'd like to protest a town hall, and I think that's Jose. Isn't that Jose's name? Yeah, that's Jose. We'll train you. And then Christina says, how about one better? I'll host a town hall. Lucy said, no offense, but no thanks. It's useless to have people that don't even understand the basics of infiltration leading any town hall. Ridiculous. Green Party leadership has outed itself. Now, I will add again, this event was hosted by multiple organizations. It wasn't just one organization that hosted this event. I'll get into that in just a second. And then she shared here where Christina said, we have someone fighting on the right side and people are focused on the wrong things. Leave Peter alone, let him manage. She was talking about Peter Dow. And then she says, I do want to add, I'll be leading a lot of town halls. Lucy said, then consider that the entire End Fossil Fuel platform is a pro-Ukraine position, a dead end. And then she shared this here, fossil fuel financing and the Russia-Ukraine war. So I have been to multiple rallies. Sometimes people do just show up and they'll speak. Like, for example, when I was a speaker at the Assange rally last October in DC, I remember Medea Benjamin, she was there. She wasn't announced as one of the speakers, so she wasn't on the list, but she showed up and she asked to speak. And so they let her give a speech. But my thing is, I felt like it was really hypocritical for AOC to speak there. That's my thing. And also, it wasn't just her. Jamal Bowman was also there speaking. I think I had a clip of him too. I lost that clip, but Jamal Bowman was also there speaking as well. So the thing is this. When people see that there are Democrats, particularly the ones who sold us out, like squad members, and they come to these events and they speak. That's the thing. There's a difference between showing up and speaking. And they speak. Then it will give people the impression that once again, this has been co-opted by the Democratic Party. Just a matter of the situation. Because when I go to these like the Assange events and all that kind of stuff, none of those people, they're not speakers. They're not present. So that's the thing. And there's more to add as well. There was also another protest. Now, I don't know if everyone saw this. This is also in reference to the climate issue in New York City at the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't blame them for protesting the Federal Reserve. Anybody can show up and say, look, shut it down. Okay. I don't blame them for this. I want to show this video clip here because they did start to arrest protesters that protested in front of the Federal Reserve. So they did arrest people. I believe, if I remember correctly, the Fed was shut down because they had blocked the entrance to it, basically. But one thing I will say is this as well. I understand this issue with fossil fuels, but if you're going to do a private protest as well, I also think it's important to mention the military-industrial complex, right? So it's also, instead of just signs that say stop fossil fuels, there should have been signs that said stop these damn wars, right? But I think there's a reason for that as well that I want to get into. Oh, I'll show you another video of the Fed so you can see this as well, of the entrance. Here we go here. So this is part of the entrance we will see. So they're saying no oil, no gas, fossil fuels can kiss my ass, but also you should also mention the military-industrial complex. This is the piece that's missing. And I've seen this from other climate activists as well, particularly here in Massachusetts. You know, some people can be a little earthy and really into these types of issues. But the moment you bring up the military-industrial complex, they just kind of look at you with the side eye like, huh? You know, you're a climate activist. How are you a climate activist and you don't understand the danger of the military-industrial complex when we talk about the methane, the CO2 that's released in the atmosphere, not just from the wars itself and combat, but also from military vehicles like the tanks. What's up, Ryan? DOD used 12.6 million gallons of fuel per day. Thank you, Ryan. So that was something I noticed here, you know, but the earthy people, they just kind of look at me like, what? Now, there was something else, because a lot of times when these things happen, we want to know, where does the money come from, right? One of the organizations, New York Communities for Change, I don't know about the other organizations, But we do have information on this one about their funding. Now, this is problematic. Now, Big Mad Crab actually shared this. New York Communities for Change is funded by billionaire fossil fuel stock owning NGOs like Center for Popular Democracy, 1630 Fund, Working's Family Party, etc. So all of this is literally performative theater. They're perfectly fine accepting millions from fossil fuels. Let's pull this up. So you'll see here, this is Schedule 1, Form 990, 2021. And I can't, unfortunately, they don't let you zoom. Okay, there we go. I can zoom it that way. Based. And then you'll see where's the money coming from, right? So here's the money, 10,000, 62,000. And then we'll scroll down there in alpha order. So you can see some of the organizations, ACC, Action, CASA in Action, Center for Coal Field, Fusion Partnership, Inc., Delaware Alliance for Community and Advancement. Whoops, scroll too far. Living United for Change in Arizona, Make the Road Action in Connecticut, Make the Road Action in Nevada. There's also Make the Road Pennsylvania, etc. I just want to go to a couple more here. Rights and Democracy Project, Public Accountability and Initiative. See, these are 501c3s. This is what I was saying before about some of these nonprofits. Like, you really have to look at these organizations and see where the money is coming from. And there's a lot. Tides Foundation, West Virginia Citizen Action Education Fund. There's Working Families Organization, Center for Popular Democracy, Inc. Now, these are the big money ones, right? Working Families donated $122,000, and Center for Popular Democracy, $300,000. You always want to look at the big donors first, I would say. But again, billionaire funded, fossil fuel stock owning NGOs. So this is why I was trying to tell people before to follow the money. I mean, what really is, what's the goal? What's the agenda? Now, does everybody who go to these rallies, do they know that? No, most people don't. Most people don't stop and look up and see, oh, all these organizations are present. Who are they all funded by? No, most people do not do that. Most of the organizations that are participating are not going to do that either. Most people just show up for the cause. So what we have seen, and we can go to the second type VNC, Eric, what we have seen over time is that billionaire funding has infiltrated even the most progressive movements that are out there, whether it's been independent media or it has been some type of political action on the ground or grassroots organization. Sunrise Movement was also present at this event as well. And I've told you before that they've taken billionaire money before. So I think the thing is that a lot of times these organizations start out in good faith and they want to exist just by grassroots funding. But as time goes by, they realize they're not raising enough money quickly. In comes billionaire. Let me offer money to help your organization. It's for a good cause. And the organization won't think twice about taking that money because they're like, we need the money. We have to be very careful with these types of issues, because if I see a rally and I wasn't there, I haven't seen all the video footage. I think it's great that over 50,000 people showed up. Hell, I'd love to have 50,000 people show up at a rally. But who are the people? Where's the money coming from? What's the real agenda? Where were the anti-war signs? Where was stop the military industrial complex signs in reference to pollution and the environment and climate? Something we got to think about. Let's go to some of these comments, man. Thank you, Sparky. Great work, beautiful. Sabby comes through with a great show again. Thank you. Catherine says Susan Sarandon is a true person of principle. Thank you. Austin says hemp can replace fossil fuels. I've heard about that. Thank you, Sparky. One of my brothers knew Ambassador Stevens Before Stevens was murdered, my brother remarked to me that Stevens was passionate about helping African unity. It's likely why he wasn't rescued. That's interesting. Thank you, George. Libya is Iraq, Chile, Guatemala, Syria, Ukraine, Taiwan. Biden is Bush, Clinton, Reagan, Trump. Now go and vote for your preferred flavor of duopoly. Well said there, George. Thank you, Dana, for the $100. Dana says, thank you. Thank you, Dana. Is that a candy cane? I think there's a candy cane in that picture. Thank you, Natalie. Standing Rock is in trouble again. Check it out. Okay, I'll have to do that. Actually, I think I got an email from someone telling me something else was happening in North Dakota. I got to check. Thank you, Alex. AOC is a fraud. Thanks, Alex. Alex, are you in the desert in that picture? Thank you, Gala. AOC is a failed actress with social media addiction. It's like watching a bad audition. LOL. JB said, Sabs, remember at the March for Medicare for All when Cori Bush came to Washington, D.C., marched and gave an impromptu speech? Something similar there. That is another good example. So that was another thing when we had the marches for Medicare for All. Cori Bush was the only one that did show up. I will say that. But then she also told the banksters, she also told people that she didn't like what we were doing, that they didn't approve of us doing those marches. But she showed up, gave them impromptu. Thank you, JB. Thanks for the reminder. And thank you, Teresa. Kim Iverson has good research on the smears and attacks on Russell Brand. He admits to past sex and drug addiction, sought help, change, and is helping others. Do we want rehabilitation or just punishment? Thank you so much for that, Teresa. I have to invite Kim back on again soon. It's been a while. Speaking of Russell, that's where we're moving to next. Before we get into this story, first of all, I want to say, I want to be very conscious of those that are victims. And I also want to be conscious of those that have been falsely accused. So I want to be careful how I word this. But I will also say, I actually have never met Russell Brand. I've never interviewed him. I've never been on his show. So I'm actually discussing this from a complete outsider perspective. I do not know the dude, but I have seen his shows. So Russell Brand has been accused of sexual assault allegations. Key word here is accused. Russell Brand has not been officially charged with a crime. And I want us to remember that as we go into this story. So let's start with the report coming straight from the UK. The sexual assault allegations against Russell Brand explained. 4 women have accused Russell Brand of, I'm just going to say assault because of how YouTube can be, all of which he denies. So let's get into this here. We'll get into the original report. In the original report, 3 publications documented 1 allegation of assault and 3 allegations of assault against Brand. Again, I'm not going to say the R word on here because, like I said, I know how YouTube can be with that. These incidents allegedly took place between 2006 and 2013 and occurred while he was working for the BBC on Channel 4 and in different films as an actor. The BBC and Channel 4 have since said they will be conducting internal investigations. Okay, before we get into the investigations, one thing I do want to add is that I want people to understand this actually did not come, just poof out of the cloud, out of nowhere. Apparently, from what I've read, these investigations have been ongoing for quite some time, a couple of years. So I have to make that very clear so people don't just assume. And I noticed some people have been assuming that out of nowhere, this story just appeared, out of the blue. There have been ongoing investigations for a couple of years. So just FYI. Let's get into the allegations. There were 4 allegations in the initial report, which uses pseudonyms for all 4 women to protect their privacy. So again, these are not their real names. Nadia, a woman who has been intimate with Brand, describes being assaulted by him in his home after rejecting his suggestions of a threesome. She was treated by an assault crisis center following the alleged attack, but declined to file a police report at the time due to concerns about her reputation and the backlash she could face. Nadia provided reporters with screenshots of text messages written after the incident, during which she wrote, "When a girl says no, it means no." And Brand replied that he was very sorry. Let me pause there for a second. If she still has those text, because she said screenshots of a text message, they would probably ask for, if this went to court, the opposing side would probably say, what's the full context of the message? Because I can take a screenshot of my text message and omit everything that was said before that or after that. So that's just, I'm not a lawyer or a judge, but I've watched a lot of Law and Order in my day. And I could see them just, doing that. Like, where's the rest of that message? How do we know that's all of it? Right. But if that's true in this part where he says if that's true, that would be interesting. Investigators also reviewed her medical records from the crisis center and subsequent counseling sessions to corroborate her account. Alice was 16. The age of consent in the UK when she dated Brand, who was 31 at the time, and says that he once forced those kind of things to happen. Now, 16. So that's another thing I've seen people on social media saying, one of them was underage and da-da-da. Well, different countries, different rules. Apparently in the UK, the age of consent is 16 years old. Now, I would say this. I would want to know what a 31-year-old man would have, or why he would have an interest in someone that's 16 years old. I would question that. And on the other side of that, one can also say, well, musicians have been doing that for quite some time. But I would question that. That's a little strange. All of these women were having some type of relationship with him. There's something I want to make very clear. That does not mean if you have a relationship with someone that they cannot assault you. That is false. But this is interesting to know. Let's go on. Alice said that she dated Brand for 3 months, during which she alleges that he groomed her and told her how to frame the relationship to her parents. In one encounter at the end of their relationship, Alice said Brand assaulted her when he, did that fellatio thing. Even as she was pushing him away, she says she had to punch him in the stomach to get him off of her. Phoebe, this is number 3, previously had a sexual relationship with Brand and described the assaults that occurred after it had ended. She says that she was working on a project at his house, during which he removed his clothes, he pinned her down and put his hand down her pants or whatever. She pushed him away. I'm trying to be careful how I say this. She also says she encountered people outside Brand's home as she was leaving, including one person who later said he heard screaming and apologized for not helping. So it'll be interesting to see if this witness of the scream, it'll be interesting to see if that person is willing to come forward. Let's continue. And the fourth person in the article describes allegations of being assaulted as well as physical and emotional abuse. In addition to the reporting on the allegations, the investigation included hundreds of interviews with people who knew Brand and had previously worked with him. This reporting also included descriptions from other women of abuses by Brand, including that he flashed his stuff at a person on the BBC set and that he threatened and shouted at women who refused to sleep with him. Additionally, it stated that Brand's approach towards women was an open secret among those who worked with him in the industry, and that past colleagues at Channel 4 felt their role was to help Brand meet young women. So, one thing I will say, I'm curious about other people who have had relationships with Russell Brand, like Katy Perry. I'm not sure if she has commented on this at all. But that'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. Now, we want to make sure that we're respectful towards those, again, that are victims and those who also have been falsely accused. And one of the comparisons that's been brought my way is Tara Reade. Some people are saying on social media that they don't understand how the people who are defending Joe Biden against Tara Reade are not defending Russell Brand, right? Some of the people are saying, oh, he was always right. He's bringing those right-wing people on there. He's gotten kind of creepy, like that kind of thing. I've seen it all in the past couple of days. Others are saying they don't understand how people who are defending Tara Reade against Joe Biden can defend Russell Brand. And to that, I say this. One thing to keep in mind with the Tara Reade situation, Tara Reade came forward in person with her real name and her story. Tara Reade went into incredible detail. Tara Reade came forward and had immense detail. Right now, in reference to this particular situation, we have 4 women who we don't know. Remember, they're using pseudonyms. They're not using their real name. So we don't know the women, and we don't have a lot of detail. We have what I told you there in that article, but not as much detail as Tara Reade gave. So just keep that in mind for the people making that comparison. Russell Brand has responded to the accusations, and I want you to hear what he had to say, and then we're going to tell you some other theories that are flirting around, and then what happened with his YouTube channel earlier this morning.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Now, this isn't the usual type of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack, and undermine the news in all its corruption, because in this story, I am the news. I've received 2 extremely disturbing letters, or a letter and an email, one from a mainstream media TV company, one from a newspaper, listing a litany of extremely egregious and aggressive attacks, as well as some pretty stupid stuff like my community festival should be stopped, that I shouldn't be able to attack mainstream media narratives on this channel. But amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute. These allegations pertain to the time when I was working in the mainstream, when I was in the newspapers all the time, when I was in the movies. And as I've written about extensively in my books, I was very, very promiscuous. Now, during that time of promiscuity, the relationships I had were absolutely always consensual. I was always transparent about that then, almost too transparent. And I'm being transparent about it now as well. And to see that transparency metastasized into something criminal that I absolutely deny makes me question, is there another agenda at play? Particularly when we've seen coordinated media attacks before, like with Joe Rogan, when he dared to take a medicine that the mainstream media didn't approve of. And we saw a spate of headlines from media outlets across the world using the same language. I'm aware that you guys have been saying in the comments for a while, watch out, Russell, they're coming for you, you're getting too close to the truth. Russell Brand did not kill himself. I know that a year ago there was a spate of articles, Russell Brand's a conspiracy theorist, Russell Brand's right wing. I'm aware of news media making phone calls, sending letters to people I know for ages and ages. It's been clear to me, or at least it feels to me, like there's a serious and concerted agenda to control these kind of spaces and these kind of voices. And I mean,
let me pause here for just a second. So one thing I do want to point out, Russell Brand has been pretty open about his past, his private life. Like, he's discussed things that I really didn't think was people's business, like about his personal life. But he's been very open and candid about like his sexual past, his drug use, etc. And I think what's really interesting is, again, I always think about timing. And I question the timing. And I think that's something we all need to ask. Where was this push before Russell Brand had this show? Let's see how old. Let's check something for just a second. And we'll come back to the video. We have to remember Russell Brand has over 6 million subscribers, right? When did Oh, let me finish the video and I'll come back and we'll check and see when the channel started.
My voice along with your voice. I don't mind them using my books and my stand-up to talk about my promiscuous consensual conduct in the past. What I seriously refute are these very, very serious criminal allegations. Also, it's worth mentioning that there are witnesses whose evidence directly contradicts the narratives that these two mainstream media outlets are trying to construct, apparently in what seems to me to be a coordinated attack. Now, I don't want to get into this any further because of the serious nature of the allegations, but I feel like I'm being attacked, and plainly they are working very closely together. We are obviously going to look into this matter because it's very, very serious. In the meantime, I want you to stay close, stay awake, but more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free. Hello there, you awakening.
So another thing to keep in mind, so let's check, I want to check something really quick, because if you go to someone's YouTube channel, right, there's the about section. They really bury this mofo. They put the about all at the end. Okay, so he joined in 2007, usually at the bottom. Okay, so joined in 2007, but the channel really started to blow up over the last, I'd say like the last 2 years, right? So we've been saying for quite some time that they were eventually going to come after Russell Brand. By they, we're talking about the government agencies, et cetera, or YouTube itself. He had already received some type of censorship on YouTube before, and then he moved over, said we're going to be live streaming on Rumble, but he still did YouTube as well. So he was still monetized. We'll get into that in just a second. But what was really interesting to me is that, oh, is the Notori post not here? I'll have to go back and check that. Notori posted something. Oh, I have to come back and get it. I have to find it. We'll come back to the Notori thing in just a second. I don't know what happened to that. But what's really interesting to me is that let's look at a pattern here. I don't like the Joe Rogan comparison because that was a different situation, but I see where he's going from. But the thing is that what has Russell Brand talked about on that channel? He's talked a lot about the pandemic, jab, in a way that the mainstream narrative does not approve of. He has criticized the deep state multiple times. He has interviewed people that, let's say, mainstream media may find to be questionable in some way, shape, or form. When it comes to political candidates, he has also interviewed people from across the spectrum, right? Like he's brought on Ron DeSantis. He's interviewed Cornel West. He's interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy. But he's been very critical about going after the establishment, the deep state, and big pharma in reference to the pandemic. What I am here to say is this. It is only a matter of time, and we've been talking about this before. It's only a matter of time before other voices like his are also going to be silenced. Whether it's this platform, Rockfin, or whatever. Because what I found kind of strange is that this investigation has been going on for a couple of years. I found it a little bit strange that now all of a sudden we're hearing about the accusations now, after he has this channel has blown up, and the topics that he's been discussing. Again, I want to repeat this just in case people are not aware. But again, these accusations did not just happen out of nowhere. This investigation did not just happen out of nowhere. This investigation has been going on for years. So why didn't we hear about those accusations years ago? Why are we just hearing about the accusations now that his channel has become the go-to channel, not just for media personalities, but also for political candidates? That channel has blown up. The moment Russell Brand's channel passed TYT, I was like, oh, they're going to start looking at him. They're going to start looking at him. That is not the Notori one I wanted, but I'll tell you guys what Notori said. Notori said, I'll see if I can try to find it. Notori tweets a lot, so I may not find this at all. But something that Notori brought up was that, does anyone find it strange that Russell Brand was the first person to make, or the first platform to do the Cornel West presidential announcement? Remember, when Cornel West announced his campaign, he chose to do it on Russell Brand's show. So what Notori was saying is that, does anybody find this to be a little bit strange? Are they trying to come after third party type of thing? Are they coming after Russell Brand because of that? Not just because of that, but is that also problematic as well? Because remember how many people watch his show. So a lot of people saw that announcement, a lot more than I think mainstream media would have wanted to. So they couldn't ignore it. And then I thought about all the people that have been candidates that have been on Russell Brand's show. And I'm starting to wonder if these people are going to be guilty by association. Is the media going to come after Vivek, Ron DeSantis, Cornel West, anyone else that Russell Brand has brought onto that show? Are they going to come after and attack their political campaigns because they went onto Russell Brand's show to talk about their race? Some of you may think, oh, that's a little far-fetched. No, I don't think so. When they try to knock you down as a political opponent, they'll come for anything. So is there going to be the guilt by association thing? Now, this morning, I found out this news, that on top of the accusations, Russell Brand's YouTube channel has been demonetized from him, meaning that he has been suspended from receiving funds from YouTube. Let me explain what that means. That means that YouTube can still run ads on his channel. Just because you see ads on someone's channel, that doesn't mean the creator is actually, receiving the revenue. I don't know how many of you, I don't know if everyone knew that, but surprise. There have been people that have been demonetized and YouTube will still run ads on their videos and YouTube will receive all the money themselves. So they're still going to show ads on Russell Brand's channel, but he will not receive the revenue of those ads. Let's bring it up. It was announced early this morning. When I tell you they really coming at, now they're coming after your money. Let's go in.
YouTube has announced that it has suspended the monetization of his channel for violating its creator responsibility policy. 4 women have accused Russell Brand of rape, sexual assault, and emotional abuse. Russell Brand denies the allegations. Well, let's get more on this with our correspondent, Vincent McAviney, who's outside the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police in London. Vinny, what more can you tell us?
Well, Russell Brand might have disappeared from more traditional media outlets over recent years, and he's no longer in Hollywood films, but he's built a huge following across social media on the likes of Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. He has millions of followers, and on YouTube in particular, he has over 6 million subscribers. He posts videos near daily, and he has monetization on them, which means that YouTube puts adverts from other companies before and after, sometimes in the middle as well, of those videos. Viewers will be familiar with them. Now, he gets a cut of the revenue from those adverts. I contacted Google yesterday, which owns YouTube, to ask them whether or not that was now under review, given the serious nature of the allegations. As you say, Russell Brand denies them, but they are still serious allegations. They didn't respond yesterday, but this morning they have come back with a statement saying, "We have suspended monetization on Russell Brand's channel for violating our creator responsibility policy. If a creator's off-platform behavior harms our users, employees, or ecosystem, we take action to protect the community." Now, I've checked.
Pause. That piece right there is very important. So what are the rules in reference to having a channel on YouTube? Now, I read the YouTube, I read the YouTube guidelines. I read it every year because they change it every year. But apparently, what you do off of YouTube can also prevent you from being able to have monetization on YouTube and recruit that ad revenue. Now, again, I just want to remind you, Russell Brand is accused. He has not officially been charged with a crime. So now he's basically guilty in the court of public opinion. YouTube has already decided, yeah, you're guilty. We're going to, demonetize your channel. And it just, what is the line? Where do you draw the line here? Let me ask you another question. If someone has committed a crime, regardless of the crime is, they've done their time, they've served their time, and they have been rehabilitated, are they not allowed to be on YouTube? What are the restrictions here? Who makes these rules? How do we know that government agencies didn't reach out to YouTube and push this? How do we know that organizations didn't reach out to YouTube and push this? Sometimes outside organizations will push it and say, you need to take him off. I'm appalled that he's on YouTube. So now what you do in your life, your private life, not just what you say on YouTube, but what you do outside of YouTube can also cause you to be penalized in reference to YouTube? What's the restrictions here? What are the rules? Let's continue. We'll come back. Let's continue. This is crazy.
Russell Brand's YouTube this morning. The account is still there, but the monetization adverts, they're no longer there. There is, however, what is called paid promotion. So you might be familiar with YouTubers, sometimes in the middle of their video, they themselves will stop, look at the camera and promote a product or a website or a service. Now, YouTube is listing at the top of the video that there is paid promotion. That is still there. So potentially, Russell Brand still can derive money from those videos through whoever did that paid promotion. Now,
let me explain what that means, because I don't think he really understands. Paid, sorry, you can tell when someone's not like a creator on YouTube. They're just like, well, whoever owns that paid promotion. Paid promotion is when you have a sponsor. So Russell Brand does have sponsors. A lot of the people that have, the Rumble channels that are contracted, the Rumble channels that have contracts, they have a sponsor most of the time. You'll see like Kim advertise like that super green stuff, whatever the thing is. And you'll see Russell Brand do the same thing, say now for a message from our sponsor, that kind of thing. So I just want to explain in reference to the sponsorship and promotion, in reference to Russell Brand, that is an outside company. So let's just say Russell Brand has Nike as a sponsor. So he still receives paid promotion from Nike by advertising their product on his show, even if it's just like 15 seconds. Now, here's the kicker. How long do you think it's going to be before those sponsors pull out? How long? We'll give it time and see. We'll give it time. Luckily for someone like Russell Brand, like I said, this is someone who's a celebrity. He was a comedian. He's been an actor. He also is in a band. Like, he's probably fine financially, meaning that he probably doesn't need YouTube, but I'm pretty sure he loves doing the show. He loves doing what he does. But at the same time, it's like when this happens to most creators on YouTube, this is all they have. And when they're hit like this by YouTube, they don't have this cushion to fall back on, so to speak. A lot of them are not wealthy. A lot of creators on YouTube are not, and they really do depend on that monetization. So just something to keep in mind. That was kind of funny the way he described it.
The other news that's emerged in the last 24 hours is from here at New Scotland Yard, the headquarters of London's Metropolitan Police. Now, they haven't named Russell Brand, but they have said that a woman has come forward to make an allegation of sexual assault in 2003 in Soho in central London. That is before the period, which was 2006 to 2013, of the weekend's revelations, but it comes after the Met put out a call for anyone that has similar allegations to come forward to them. She is now being supported by specialist officers. Russell Brand, as I said, denies the allegations. He was meant to be performing at a theatre in Windsor, but that date and the rest of his current tour have been postponed. He is likely now to face an investigation from the Metropolitan Police, who will want to speak to him.
Vincent, thank you very much, Vincent.
Okay, so this is what they do first, right? First, they again, we don't know if he's innocent or guilty, but if I was on the attack, first the smears would come, then they would come after your finances, they would hit you financially, and eventually just erase you altogether. That's typically how these attacks work. And I want to show you what Fiorella said, because I think this is very important. Fiorella Isabel said, whatever you think of Russell Brand, his shady celebrity connections or his problematic behavior towards women is fine. She's not saying his behavior is fine. FYI, she's saying whatever you think of him is fine. But what's undeniable is that the media, Hollywood, or Google didn't seem to care at all until he started saying things that went against their chosen narrative. And did I respond to Fiorella? Yeah, I said bingo. I don't usually give long responses, but I think that's something for us to take into consideration when we're thinking about this story. When I say the timing, that's what I'm talking about. And I'll say it again. This investigation has been happening for years. Why are we just now hearing about it now? I got to be clear here. We need to talk about the media for just a second. Mainstream media is dying. Mainstream media is dying. I don't know about you guys, but most of us, a lot of us don't have cable anymore. When do you watch network television? I only watch network television when I'm watching sports. That's it. Football on Sunday or Monday night or Thursday night football, baseball games, whatever. If it's not sports, I'm not watching network television. You see the problem? If these sports channels were on like Netflix or Hulu, I wouldn't even have a YouTube TV. Other than that, I'm not watching it. What does that tell you? Mainstream media, network television is dying. More people spend time watching YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, HBO Max. People aren't watching it. The people who do like mainstream media, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, these networks are dying. They're not growing, which means that people are choosing other sources and platforms to retrieve their news. These networks know what's happening. They've known it for quite some time, and they're very much concerned. So the fact that someone like Russell Brand, who's a comedian actor, that he was able to get to over 6 million subscribers on YouTube, covering the news, scares the life out of them. Let's be real. Scares the life out of these people. And when they start to see you as a threat, and they do, they're going to come for you. They're going to come for you unless you're following their narrative. Who's next? Throw out names in the chat. Who do you think is next? Who's next? Don't look at me. I'm not big enough for them to be afraid of. These channels that have these millions of subscribers, those are the people they're looking at. And they're looking to see, what are you saying? What you talking about? Who's next? Last year, I said that the large channels on YouTube don't have to worry about the narrative so much because they tend to be protected because they produce a lot of money for YouTube. I was wrong. That is no longer the case. If they can do that to a channel that has over 6 million subscribers, they'll come after anyone. Anyone. So if they're going to take down or come after Russell Brand, you can only imagine who is going to be next. Remember Joe Rogan, that's why he took that deal with Spotify, because they were, you know, taking his content down. No one's really protected. I don't know. Again, we don't know. Right now, I just want to say again, Russell Brand is accused. He has not been charged with a crime. And that's what I want people to remember and to keep into their head. Because I saw people on social media already saying, I knew he was sleazy. I knew it. We really don't know. We have accusations. We have no charge. And for people making the comparison to Tara Reid, again, Tara Reid came forward. Tara Reid's mother called in. But Tara Reid came forward and gave a very detailed account of what happened to her. And another thing I want to remind you too, Tara Reid was speaking out against her boss. So let's remember that. That's a good point, Dwayne. That's a good point, Dwayne. So why is YouTube banning it? They're not banning him. They demonetized. They suspended him from demonetization, meaning that they can still show ads on his videos, but he can't recruit the ad revenue. But to the point, so why is this happening? Right. Why are they doing that to someone who's been accused, but they haven't been charged? And what is the rule? This is what I want you to take home. What is the rule around who can have a channel on YouTube? If they're saying like what you do in your private life actually does matter in reference to having a YouTube channel, what are the rules? Because let me tell you, I didn't see that in their community guidelines. Things to think about. I'm sorry, Notori. I wish I would have found that tweet from Notori. It might have been in an email, but I'll go to the super chats. Tia says, my thing is, why are they blowing up the thing with Brand when Tara Reid's case was shut down? Yep. Thank you, Natalie. As with Julian being the head of the pike for a free press, Russell is the same for free speech. Thank you, Sparky. Globalist controlled protest organizations keep energetic protesters occupied so they don't find more important issues or effective organizations. That is interesting. Thank you, Skyzer. Always the same people. Always the same with those who dare defy our corporate establishment. I'm not going to say those words on here. We're a total mafia-run state, like Jimmy Dore says. Stephanie, exactly. She also filed a complaint with Congress and HR at the time. That's true. She's talking about Tara Reid. She did. JB said, Sabs, this is why we need a YouTube files ASAP. Exactly. Look, we all saw the Twitter files. We need to see the YouTube files. Thank you, Gala. Please bring Caleb Maupin back to the show, Sab. Thank you, Gala. Thank you, Sparky. J. Edgar Hoover kept files on non-political celebs just in case they became political problems later, but was limited by file cabinet space. Modern tech makes law enforcement and intel hell on wheels. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover was a clown. Thank you, Mary. Might be you, Sabby. Watch your back. Yeah, I'm not much of a threat, and most people don't even know I'm around. But those kind of the $1 million, the million subscriber channels, they looking at you, man. They looking at you. We'll have to wait and see what happens with this situation. Let's bring up that comment there on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you, Hemp, for the tip. What does green even mean anymore? Geo and bioengineer the planet, animals, and human body? See Dennis Kucinich, HR 2977 bill about weather weapons. Really? ... Have to check that out. And thank you for this as well. it just half of the brands followed Occupy DC, that would solve our problems. With a fan base that big, you could set a date and many would follow. Thank you for the Libya coverage. How is no one buying a boat, sneaking in those borders and killing these slaves purchasing POS? It's so unbelievable. It's hard to believe, yet no one hardly talks about it. These seem like people who need our help most. Yeah, it's not discussed much at all, actually. Thank you, Roger Meadows, for the tip. Katy Perry, I'm ad-libbing here, Sabrina, said, I can break him, but it was a toxic, controlling marriage that I had to get out of. It is possible that two things can be true at the same time. You could be punching up at the establishment successfully, and you could have did this bad thing in the past. Also, YouTube needs to be nationalized to protect due process and the First Amendment rights. And thank you for this tip as well. Take what you just said and apply it to radio as well. Is anyone still listening to AM and FM radio for music? The thing that I do miss is it was radio that would make classics with continuous rotation of you hearing it all the time until it becomes a classic. Only problem was you had the gatekeeper record companies who were doing payola and suppressing other musicians like they did KRS and Nelly Battle. Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's a lot of stories going on right now. If you have not had the chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. That helps me with the algorithm. Boop, boops. We're going on to our next story here, and that is about Donald Trump had an interview recently with Megyn Kelly. I want to make sure I start from the very beginning of that conversation, which there are a couple things in this interview I got to debunk, like for real. Like I was like, no, that's not really true. There are some things that are true and there are some things that are not true. We're going to focus on a couple of moments from this interview. Now, I will say that I've been paying close attention to who Donald Trump is willing to have interviews with. Like he's having an interview with Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, which I'm surprised by the Megyn Kelly one because they've had their disagreements before in the past too. But notice he seems to be reluctant to have these lengthy interviews with mainstream media. That's something I've noticed. This was a long interview. This interview was over an hour and a half. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
To hell, whether it's impeachment or not impeachment, this man is destroying our country at the border. He's destroying it economically. Inflation's way up now. You see what happened just today. That's up to them if they want to do impeachment or impeachment inquiry. I never had an inquiry. Nancy Pelosi, crazy Nancy, said, we're going to impeach him. They didn't do inquiries. They went out and they voted because they had the votes. And as usual, everybody votes, for the Democrats. It's a little bit easier. They didn't have Mitt Romneys of the world. And that's really nice because now he's not running today, as you know. He just announced. I think that's great for the Republican Party, for the country, and for Utah. But that's going to be up to them whether or not they want to do it. I have no idea whether they will or not. We do have a lot of other things, but it's quite important. And they did it to me. And had they not done it to me, I think, and nobody officially said this, but I think had they not done it to me, and I'm very popular in the, they like me and I like them, the Republican Party, perhaps you wouldn't have it being done to them. And this is going to happen with indictments too. They have fake indictments, and I think you're going to see that as time goes by. You're going to see Republicans, when they're in power, doing it. And it's a shame when that happens. I'm not in favor of that, but that's what's going to happen because that's human nature.
Would you do it if you became president again? Turn the indictment tables on the Dems?
Well, I would think about it differently. I would have never even thought of doing it, but now you certainly have to think about it differently. It doesn't mean I do it because I think it's so bad for the country. Yesterday, President Putin of Russia used this as an example of what a rotten country we are, that they go after their political opponent. And other countries are doing that too. Other countries that don't like us are doing that. They're saying it's the biggest story. They love it because it makes us look very bad. It makes us look very bad. And they're fake indictments. There's Fannie Willis and all of these people. These are all fake indictments. And I don't know how much my polls have gone. I was doing well before this, but I don't know what impact it's had on my polls, but we're...
That's interesting. So he's talking about, he starts off this discussion discussing Joe Biden's situation, and he thinks that Joe Biden has ruined the country economically. I happen to agree with him on that. The inflation is ridiculous. I don't agree with him here where he's saying, I don't know how my polls have been doing. Come on. I don't know how the indictments have been affecting my polls. Come on. I'm pretty sure he's looked at those polls. The indictments have actually helped his polling. We've talked about that before on this show. But I want to focus on something he mentioned here in reference to how other countries see us. I have friends that live abroad, and they don't look at us too favorably right now. They see the U.S. as a freaking clown show. We're a zoo. It's a mess. There's like, how do you have a former president that has multiple indictments? Your current president has been accused of sexual assault. Your current president can barely walk and talk. And the economy's a mess. And now the Republican Party is trying to impeach your current president, just like the Democratic Party tried to impeach the former president. So they just kind of look at us as like, what the hell is happening in the United States? That I can attest to. He's correct about that part.
Way up above the Republicans, and we're way up on Biden.
Well, let's talk about the allegations against the Bidens for a minute, because this was something you tried to raise when you ran against Biden in 2020. I watched you at that presidential debate try to raise these very issues that now the House is investigating.
Right.
Why do you think that didn't gain traction?
Well, it's different when it's a Republican doing it and a Democrat. The press is fake news. I think I'm very proud of certain things. I've shown open borders. I've shown crime. I've shown a lot of things, but I've also shown that the press is fake. And if I say something, even if it's true, they don't want to talk about it. You know, it's really what they don't talk about more than what they talk about. They don't talk about things. You know this better than anybody. I brought it up at the debate. Chris Wallace, who tried awfully hard to be his father, but he hasn't got the talent. And what happened, Mike Wallace, who was great, who interviewed me actually in 60 Minutes. He actually gave me probably the only good interview he's ever done, meaning a nice interview. He liked me and I liked him. He was a tough cookie, but he was good and a total pro. But Chris will never be that. But at the debate,
do you see what he just did there? How he did a side swipe at Chris Wallace. So for those who are not familiar, I don't know how old everyone is in the chat, but some of you may remember Mike Wallace. He was a commentator, and Chris Wallace is his son. So sometimes people do make the comparisons. But did you see how he tried to do that side swipe there towards Chris Wallace and say, yeah, he did a great interview with me, but he'll never be like his father. You know, it's just like, what? It's ridiculous. So first of all, just because you're a political candidate doesn't mean people have to be nice to you. And this is something you see a lot is more mainstream media. You know, I think they're used to these reporters, these commentators, because they are a political candidate, particularly a presidential political candidate. I think they think they're supposed to be treated in such a way that you're not supposed to push back on them. You're not supposed to ask them difficult questions. And you can do all of these things without yelling at someone and screaming and trying to bite their head off. But people who are interviewing Donald Trump shouldn't just be nice to him just because he's running for president again and just because he's a political candidate. Like, that's not how this works.
he was moderating, and I said, what about the mayor of Russia's wife? He's the mayor of Moscow's wife. Now, you have the mayor of Moscow, him, married to a woman. He passed away, left her a vast fortune from being the mayor, okay? I mean, this is a nice way to make money. And she gave $3.5 million to Biden. And I brought that up during the debate, and Chris Wallace said, this has nothing to do with anyone. Well, now it's the biggest subject. Everyone's talking about it. And now they go back to that debate, and that debate's getting a lot of look-see. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame that they didn't do it. Chris Wallace should have never done what he did. He tried to stifle it. I mean, literally, I was like debating two people. I was actually debating 1 1/4. I would say Wallace would be 1 and Biden was 1/4. But he was just standing there. But I said, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave him $3.5 million. I want to find out why What did he do to earn this money?
Tried to raise
and
that.
they wouldn't do that.
You tried to raise China. You tried
China?
to raise the laptop.
Yeah.
You got shut down.
Everything.
And they didn't want to discuss it on social media. Got banned on Twitter, the New York Post, all those stories. Let me shift gears and ask you, now that Joe Biden's in the office, there was just a poll out, 77% of Americans say that Joe Biden at age 80 is too old to be president. Are they right?
I wish they would stop, and not Megan's fault, but I wish they would stop framing that poll as too old, because it's not a matter of his age, his chronological age. It's a matter of his cognitive ability. It's a matter of that mental decline that we see happening with Joe Biden right in front of our eyes. And I feel like they're trying to tiptoe around that issue when they should not tiptoe around that issue.
No, not for the reason of old, because I have many friends that are in their 80s. I have friends, Bernie Marcus, that are in their 90s, and they're sharp as a tack. I would say just about what they used to be. No, not old. He's incompetent. He's not too old. He's incompetent. And age is interesting because some people are very sharp and some people do lose it, but you lose it at 40 and 50 also. No, he's not too old at all. He's grossly incompetent. You look at some of the great. You look at some of the great world leaders. They were in their 80s, and they did. I mean, Churchill. So many people. They were phenomenal in their 80s. You know, there's a great wisdom if you're not in a position like him. But if you go back 25 years, he wasn't the sharpest tack either.
Ron DeSantis has come out to say that 80-year-olds shouldn't be president, that if you're the nominee, the GOP will lose age as a cudgel to use against Joe Biden. Does he have a fair point?
Well,
Ron DeSantis says some of the dumbest. I'm sorry. It's just, why would you even focus on that? If you're going to attack people that they're your political opponents, you attack them on policy.
Well, if he's the nominee, they'll lose because he's a lousy candidate. So, you know, I'd rather take on the age issue. I feel I'm physically extremely good. I feel the same way I did 40 years ago. I mean, I feel as good as I've ever felt. Athletically, I'm just about as good as I ever was. I, do certain things. I play golf. I win club championships and I beat people that are 25 years younger than me. I hit the ball just as far as I actually think I hit it a little bit further. But just at this club, this is a big club with a lot of good members, a lot of good players.
You must have good genes, Mr. President, because you eat McDonald's. I know you love chocolate. You love the Diet Coke. How are you doing that? How?
Well, it's really a parental thing, much more so than I believe in the racehorse theory. Fast horses produce fast horses. I mean, it's a little bit about your parents. My parents were very good. They lived to an old age. My father he lived old. He lived into his 90s, well into his 90s, and my mother lived quite a life.
Okay, let's talk policy, immigration in particular. As of late, recently, we've seen several Democrats.
By the way, in reference to the McDonald's thing, I remember I used to actually like McDonald's when I was younger. I swear it doesn't taste the same. Maybe it's just me, but I remember McDonald's French fries used to be the jam. Okay. If I didn't eat anything else at McDonald's, I would get their French fries, and those were nobody had better French fries than McDonald's. And then over the years, it's just the fries are kind of limp. Sometimes they look a little soggy. Some of them have salt, some of them don't. They don't have that same crisp potato crunch taste. So for me, McDonald's, to me, I just really don't like it. I drive past the McDonald's and I think about high blood pressure. I guess I'm just getting at that age where I start to think about those types of things. I was people are let's go to McDonald's. I'm oh, diabetes, things like that.
Lawmakers speaking out after their cities, including New York, but many others, are overrun by the influx of migrants who have come to the country illegally. They want federal money. They want President Biden to fast track work permits for these people. They want mostly for these migrants to go elsewhere.
Right.
What should be done about this problem?
Well, they're going to have to talk up because no country or city or state is sustainable doing this. You have thousands of people. I was in New York. I saw on Madison Avenue, there's magnificent shops. Madison Avenue, Fifth Avenue, the greatest. Madison Avenue, thousands and thousands of people. And they're sitting on the street. They're not even on the sidewalk because there's not enough room on the sidewalk. And you have these beautiful stores that are paying a lot of rent, and they have to sell luxury merchandise, and that goes to the city in form of taxes and all these other things. And they're not going to be able to stay in business. The money that's being lost in these cities, Chicago, Los Angeles. So now you have the massive crime problem, and it's vast in Democrat-run cities. On top of that, you have the migrants or the illegal aliens, many different names. But the
Let's pause here for just a second. We're going to talk about this immigration issue. We're going to connect it to the homelessness issue as well. First and foremost, what we have to remember, whenever I hear people talk about migrants coming to the U.S., the immigration issue, it is very important. I've already seen this interview. So one of the things I do is I sit and wait, and I wait to see if they're going to say anything about the reason why they're coming here and the brutality that's happening in their countries. That is, you can blame the US government for what's happening in those countries. And that's why they're leaving those countries. And that's why they're coming here. And most of the time that is never mentioned, whether it's Megyn Kelly, whether it's Anderson Cooper, it doesn't matter if they're liberal or conservative, they tend to leave that piece out. Now, for as many people that didn't like the interview that Anderson Cooper had with Cornel West brought that up in that interview. They don't want to bring this up. Now he's complaining about the migration that's happened to some of these cities. So New York City, Eric Adams has talked about this. You know, at first they said they were a sanctuary city. You're welcome to come here. And then when Republican governors had those migrants come in, they actually transported them to those sanctuary cities like New York City, like Massachusetts. Also, they transported them here to Martha's Vineyard, etc. Here's the thing. When we talk about the people coming in, when we talk about resources being used towards them instead of American people, let's keep it real, folks. The resources weren't being used properly for American people to begin with in the first damn place. If the resources were being used properly for the American people, everyone in this country would have health care, but they don't. People would have housing. Before Joe Biden even took office, and I still have plenty of criticism for Joe Biden, but before Joe Biden even took office, the tent communities were already a problem with thousands of homeless people on the streets. That is not because of immigration. That is because of a failed capitalist system in this country where people have been evicted because they can't pay their rent. And we have to actually push back on this narrative that all the homeless people living in the tents are on drugs. They're not. There are some people who are homeless. They're living in their cars, but they have a job. How'd they get there? Living paycheck to paycheck. One unexpected expense, one medical bill. That's how a lot of them get there. Not everybody has a family that they can go to and ask for extra money and say, help me out. Some people are on their own. And that's something that we have to remember. But let's keep it real. And this is something I wish Megyn would have said to Trump. This is something that we got to push back on and say, the resources in this country were not being used for the American people in the first damn place. We didn't want to pay people $15 an hour. We don't even want to give people a living wage in this country. Tell me more about these resources and how they're being used to help the American people. So you see, we have to be very careful with this scapegoat mentality. Every time there is an economic downturn, someone else is blamed. There's always a scapegoat. If it's not immigrants, it'll be Black people. It'll be indigenous people. It'll be, I remember this from my generation, those damn millennials. It's our fault. It'll be the Gen Z kids. There's always a scapegoat. Every time there is an economic downturn, when we actually should be pointing fingers at the billionaires and the oligarchs that run this country in the first damn place. Because let's be real, when we have economic problems in this country, Billionaires, millionaires, and the CEOs, they're actually usually doubling their profits. During the pandemic, the CEOs, they doubled their profits while other people were struggling. Now you can sit back and you can blame, Jose, who came from Mexico or came from Colombia. You can blame all those people all you want to. But you need to push back against real power in this country. Those people don't have no power. This is something both parties get wrong. Democrats and Republicans, they both get this wrong. They try to make it seem like people who don't have power actually do have power. That's so you won't focus on the people who really have the power. So let's think about that. The crime issue that he was just talking about, crime and poverty are often connected. Ding, ding, ding. 80% of crime is poverty driven. Get the people off the streets, give the people a living wage, and you'll see the crime rate decrease. This is not rocket science. You don't need to go to college to know this. I've seen it happen in real life. So we have to be careful.
Legal aliens pouring in, going into the cities, and it's sad because the mayor of New York, he knows that it's a very horrible thing, and they're afraid to take on the Democrat Party. It's very hard to take on the Democrat Party. Look at RFK Jr. They're not giving him the vote. I mean, they're saying you have to get a vast number of votes in order to even qualify, that making it impossible for him. They're essentially rigging the election, which they're very good at. So
how do you get them out of there? Like you take over as president, what are you going to do?
Well, you're going to have to move them out. Look, this is not sustainable by this country. So I think the number will be at the end of the year 15 million people. It's not going to be 3 million, 2 million. I think it's going to be 15 million. But the truth is we have no idea because they're pouring in. Also, they come from prisons. They come from insane asylums. They come from mental institutions. And there's vast numbers of terrorists. I saw just on one of the shows during the weekend that...
We're just going to pause here for a second. You see what's happening? They come from prisons. They come from mental institutions. Really? All of them? Not even most of them. This narrative, that scapegoat narrative, we have to be careful about that. Richard Wolff talks about this quite often, actually. He said he saw this happening when he was a kid. They were doing the same thing. Economic downturn, got to find a scapegoat.
In 2019, that was me, we had no terrorists come in, no terrorists. They knew that they couldn't come in. We were very tough. Zero. It actually said zero, which is shocking because I'm sure a couple got in. And then I see over the last couple of years, it was large, hundreds and hundreds of terrorists coming in. But I noticed in 2019, it said zero. I don't know if I even believe it myself. But it showed you that we had a tough policy. And now it's hundreds.
How do you know that for sure that zero came in? We have to remember when we think back to the 9/11 attacks, the guys that flew the planes, those guys were in this country for a while, boo. They may not have seemed like a problem. They were here for a while. So how are you certain?
Hundreds and hundreds of terrorists are coming in. Thousands and thousands of prisoners and people from mental institutions are pouring into our country. And this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable. When you look at New York and you look at the streets and the people that can't even walk on the sidewalks, they're taking up the schools. We're going to educate people that don't speak a word of English. I mean,
pause. See, this was my hot button here because as someone who was a former educator, let me tell you about ESL. This is not a new thing. Trump is talking about this as though it's a new thing that we're having immigration into the schools and the kids don't speak English. No, that's been a problem. That's been an issue for a long time. Even when I was doing my clinicals, when I was in grad school, that was an issue. And you know what happened? What happened was there was this certification that at least here in Massachusetts, that they pretty much, it was recommended, then eventually got to the point where they said you're required to get the ESL certification. So as a teacher, they want you to be ESL certified, English second language learners. So you receive that certification so that you can teach those kids that are learning English as a second language. One of my best friends, who, by the way, came into the country legally from Puerto Rico, and her parents were from Puerto Rico, she learned English in school. That's how long this has been going on. This is not a new thing. That's what I want people to understand. People hear this and say, oh my God, they're coming to the schools and they don't know English. That's been the case for such a long time. So there are resources put in place to assist those kids. Had to interrupt that there and say that, because I can't have people walking away from the show thinking that's a new thing.
And our students have enough problems, but they're giving them cell phones. You know the amazing thing? Everybody has a cell phone. I was watching yesterday, and there are hundreds of people sitting on the sidewalk.
Yes, I understand that, Dr. Nick, that Puerto Ricans are citizens, what you talk about. I understand that, but she didn't speak English, and neither did her parents. In fact, I don't think her mom speaks English to this day. So what I'm saying is she still learned English in the school system here. And she's not the only one. In Massachusetts, I know when I was doing my observations at the Elliott School, there were kids that were from Guatemala. There were kids that were from Colombia, like from South America. They didn't speak English either. We taught them English in the school.
And these are illegal immigrants, and they all have cell phones. And I say, number one, how did they get the cell phone? Number two, you have to pay your bill, right? Who pays their bill? But every one of them, they're all looking at the cell phone. They're making calls. And
could be prepaid cell phone. It could be a burning phone, a burner phone, like Breaking Bad, Trump. Prepaid phones still do exist.
They just came over the border illegally. Now, we had a very strong border. We had the strongest border in history. We had the lowest numbers, the best numbers in history. And it wasn't easy. We built.
Did I say legally? What are you talking about, Dr. Rivera? Why'd you say legally then? Oh, sorry, my bad.
500 miles of wall. We were going to build another 200 miles. It was under construction. Would have been done in 3 weeks. And they stopped it. We had a rigged election, as you probably heard. And
Did they stop it? Is that true? Did they stop building on the wall? No, they didn't. In fact, Joe Biden continued to build onto Trump's wall. See, again, these are the kind of things that people need to hear. Now, I don't know if he completed that. I don't think Joe Biden completed it. But Joe Biden, even under the Biden administration, they were continuing to build onto that wall. No pushback from Megyn Kelly. Megyn has to know this.
Stopped it. They stopped this from being built.
Well,
they could have had it done. They could have had it done in a period of 3 weeks, and they stopped it. But regardless,
can I ask you about that though? Because that is one thing that your critics say would have helped keep some of these migrants out. A wall.
Oh,
so
sure.
whatever happened with that? Because
we built it.
What Border Patrol says is we only added 46 miles. So
okay.
But Megyn, this part right here, I felt Megyn. There's no way Megyn does not know this. Because I remember when it was first announced on CNN and they were showing the video footage of them adding onto the wall, I remember there was criticism towards the press secretary at that time. I think it was still Jen Psaki at that time. There was criticism because reporter asked, like, why is the Biden administration adding onto Trump's wall when they were opposed to that? And she tried to dodge the question, never really didn't want to answer. But there's no way Megyn cannot be this oblivious to this. I don't buy it.
Said you're going to do 1,000.
No. Border Patrol doesn't say that. Who says that are Democrats when they try. So you have hundreds of miles.
Let me set up the numbers. You tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, go ahead.
In 2016, you said there was going to be a border wall up across about 1,000 miles.
No.
And
I don't know if I said 1,000, but I said whatever.
I mean, it's 2,000 miles long, but we have rivers and we have
you have
barriers.
Of the 2,000 miles, you need it on 500 to 600 miles because you have rivers and and desert. You have a lot of different bad conditions.
So they said when Barack Obama left office, we had 654 miles covered, and that you were going to get us to 1,000, and that you only added less than 50 miles of wall.
Okay,
Go
ready?
ahead. You go.
So what they say is that if there's a board lying on the ground, a 2x4, that was there for 50 years and sitting there rotted, that was a wall. And that when I added a brand new wall that went up 30 feet and it's solid steel, concrete, and rebar, that was not a wall because that was just a renovation. So what they do is they call it a renovation. If there are boards sitting on the ground, if there are nails, if there's steel sitting on the ground, there's no wall. But if it used to be a wall like 30, 40 years ago where they had just a fence because there were no walls, they had just like a little low fence or a barrier so that cars couldn't come across, and it was rotted and laying on the ground, they don't give me credit for a wall. But they do actually, because if you look at the numbers, they say, I built almost 500 miles of wall. I built almost 500. Some of that was wood laying on the ground that we took away, threw away, and we built a brand new wall. So what they're trying to say is that we built 50 or 60 miles of wall because there were 50 or 60 where there was never anything. But any wall that was there was decrepit, it was gone, it was rusted, it was rotted, it was laying on the ground, and we would actually just take it away. Then we built a really incredible new wall. The wall that was built.
You guys see what's happening here? There's way too much focus on this. How long it was, how deep the wall went, how many meters. There's way too much focus on this. Now, this interview also does discuss the pandemic, which we can't discuss on here. I'm sorry about that, guys. And then they go into the transgender thing too. We can't get into that either on here. YouTube is also penalizing people for that as well. Here's the point that I want to bring across. And I focus so heavily on immigration. I felt like there was too much focus on how long it was and how many meters, and none of them have answered in reference to the immigration issue with those who were already in the country. None of them have answered to those who come here by plane and overstay visas. And I don't hear that. This is the thing. Everybody keeps talking about the border, people crossing the border illegally. But there's another elephant in the room, which is those who do come here legally, but overstay their visas. And I feel like that's not talked about much. But the point that I want you to see from both of this is that Biden was adding onto this wall. Trump was building the wall. He even told you Obama was doing something down there as well, as in reference to, I think he had the fence. But the thing is, all of those presidents, regardless if they were Democrat or Republican, they were trying to find a way to keep the people out. And there's still kids in cages at the border under Joe Biden. And if Joe Biden continues to run for president, right now they said he still is. If going to 2024, Joe Biden is still running for president and Trump debates Joe Biden, all he has to do is bring up the fact of you have kids in cages at the border. That's another issue. The healthcare issue and the immigration issue has been an issue for as long as I can remember. And I want people to understand it's not that they can't fix it. They can. They just choose to prioritize other things. The immigration process in this country needs to be more smoother. It's not. People shouldn't have to wait 10, 15 years. It's a mess. It's a mess. What's that, Echo J? We know why. Most visa overstays are European, so it's not illegal immigration. It's non-white illegal immigration. There you go. There you go, Echo J. They don't talk about that. We're going to go to some of the comments, and then we'll get into this story about Jink and Brianna Joy Gray. Yeah. I was shocked to see Jink on Rising, but oh, man. He didn't do himself any favors. Thank you for the super sticker, Regine. Thank you. Multimind says, notice Orange Man's never been interviewed by Sabrina. That would never happen. That would never happen. Trust. Thank you for the super chat, PXL. Thank you, Sabs and Eric. Keep up the fight. Look, I got it with me today. Get my tea. See? Keep up the fight. Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Even the homeless that are on drugs are dealing with a disease known as addiction. They are not underserving of homes, shelter, food, and safety. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, Courtney. You can barely smell food cooking in McDonald's, if not all, most of the time when I went there. Thank you. That's interesting. Thank you, Roger. Yes, going on for years, but he just found out about it. Thank you, Sparky. Like many boomers, Trump watches too much legacy media and goes on the shows. He should go on Sabby, Sabs, and Jimmy Dore and answer why his own people like Pompeo and Gina Haspel fooled him. I don't think Trump would be coming onto this show at all. At all. I'll take that comment on Rockfin Roger. Thank you. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin. Yes, Mike Wallace was a tough cookie when he interviewed people. He didn't care who you were. That's why Trump respected him. Love the side swipe at his son and Mitt Romney. Regarding what we did in other countries, always remember, Sab, that democracy died 76 years ago today. Democracy died 76 years ago yesterday with Truman signing of the NSA Act, which brought into existence the CIA and the NSA. Truman, worst president in 120 years. Damn. Yes. We're going to get into this story here about Cenk Uygur and Briahna Joy Gray talking about basically how the left should move forward if they should continue to try to reform the Democratic Party. And then also this measure of force the vote. Yes, people are still talking about force the vote because it was a point in time where we really could have gotten something, right? We could have seen how people were going to vote and that would have revealed their hand. And then what you do is you get candidates to primary challenge those people who voted against Medicare for all, and you get their ass out of office. That was the whole plan. Apparently, all of a sudden now, Cenk doesn't seem to remember what the strategy was. He's on Rising Line. Bree obviously checked him, but let's get started with the first part of the discussion, which is about whether or not people should start to support third party, etc., or continue to fight within the Democratic Party. And also, Cenk just wrote a new book called Justice is Coming. Let's get into it.
But he keeps trying to bring the left over to the right wing. That's not how you do it. You say, look, it's not that you guys are moving your position or that we're moving our position. It's just that we're finding common ground in the places where we agree. Both of us can take yes for an answer, but you should not sheep herd your audience to the right wing. That is not at all productive. Now, in terms of hierarchies, like I said earlier, you don't need a hierarchy. Why do we have to debate and vote on, is this social issue more important or is this economic issue more important? It's not that hard to do both. It's not. So when they pass laws against trans people, gay people, etc., in these states, when they pass the law saying we shouldn't teach real African-American history in Florida, you could fight back against that. And at the same time, hey, Republicans, you know that 3/4 of you agree with us on paid family leave. We'll take yes for an answer. Come on, let's go do paid family leave together. Let's make sure that moms and dads have 12 weeks off after they deliver a baby. And so there's no reason in the world you can't do both. And once you get into hierarchies and prioritizing, that starts internal wars. Oh, you think class is more important than race? Oh, you think race is more important than class? And then all you're doing is fighting when you cannot win on economic issues unless you unite against the establishment. They're the ones that are actually in charge.
So if you're going to unite against the establishment, what Cenk is basically saying there is that you shouldn't try to move leftists to the right. You should try to move the right left on the issues that we agree with. I understand that. What I don't understand is this position here when he says that we should be fighting back against the establishment. But how can we fight back against the establishment if you're still trying to do this within the Democratic Party, which is owned by the establishment? Yeah. It's like me trying to fight back at Chips Ahoy, but I'm still working inside of Nabisco. Like it just, we're not tackling the big tent. We're not tackling the real problem. So just trying to reform the Democratic Party by putting in people, politicians here and there, that doesn't change the system. You're still supporting the establishment. And that's a big part of the problem. So hold on to that piece where he said there about fighting back against the establishment, because that'll be important later on in the discussion.
Speaking of sheep herding, there are some who are over the idea of working within the Democratic Party who see the obstacles to actually winning as insurmountable after Bernie Sanders, who was better positioned than probably any candidate the left is going to have in generations, was thwarted the way he was thwarted by the Democratic Party. And now people are seeing the way the DNC is ostensibly rigging the election in various ways, not having any debates, saying that there will be no primary, changing the order of the primary contest, et cetera, in a way that makes it very difficult for insurgent candidates like Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. to advance in the polls. As a consequence of all of that, many people on the left are saying, I'm over participating in the Democratic Party entirely, are looking to third-party campaigns like Dr. Cornel West's campaign, and see those who would want folks to participate in any kind of electoral contest within the Democratic Party as doing exactly that, as sheep herding, especially when some of the people who might encourage one to vote for a Democrat ultimately in 2020 or 2016 and probably in 2024 are going to say at the end of the day, you should vote to defeat Trump and vote for the Democrat, even if they don't reflect the progressive values that you've said, and I agree, are so popular. What do you make of that argument?
So she's talking about people like me that says, like, what's the point of this strategy of trying to reform the Democratic Party if at the end of the day, when these people lose, and they will lose, the response is just go ahead and support their establishment opponents because that's better than getting someone on the right. That's me. So I've been saying that for quite some time. And I feel like the progressive energy just doesn't hold the line. Actually, there's not much energy anymore, but they don't hold the line. They didn't hold the line in reference to force the vote. They didn't hold the line in reference to the infrastructure bill. They didn't hold the line in reference to the 15-minute minimum wage. So I think that there were multiple opportunities where they could have used some type of leverage. Listen to what Jinx says.
So I think that rationality dictates that you have to understand the distinction between primaries and general elections. So the establishment says you shouldn't have primaries, especially on the Democratic side. You should just bow your head. Whoever's in charge, they get to dictate who should be the leader. And you progressives are rascals. You're so unruly. You must obey, right? If you listen to that, you're nuts. That is them totally brainwashing you. There should be.
He said the establishment says that we should not have primaries. But who's the they, right? That's corporate America and the military-industrial complex. That's who owns the parties. They're the ones making that decision. That's Goldman Sachs. That's Wells Fargo. That's Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's Lockheed Martin. That's who the they is. Right? So why would you still try to participate in a party that is controlled by those entities? That's the question to ask. Watch
a
this.
Massive primary against Joe Biden. Poll out today, 72% of Americans think that he is not mentally capable of running again, that he's too old. 72%. And the lunatics in the Democratic Party and the lunatics in Washington go, yeah, we should run a guy that 72% of the country doesn't think could be president against Donald Trump. They say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, but let's run an addled, wounded antelope against this demagogue fascist. How does that make sense? That doesn't make any sense at all. There's just their lust and their greed for power is unbearable. So that's the primaries. And in the primaries, Marianne is, at this point, clearly the best candidate. It's not even close, okay? But as you see there's one thing I wanted to quickly correct. Because in my opinion, I don't think the Democratic Party has much power at all. So they set the debates, they set this, they set that. I understand that, but they don't rig votes. They just set all the context. And I hate the rules that they set, and I think they're deeply corrupt. But that's
let me chime in here for just a second. He's saying that they don't have much power. Their donors do. The donors have power. That's why we don't have health care for everyone. That's why we don't have Medicare for all, because of the pharma donors that a lot of the politicians in the Democratic Party have. Democrats and Republicans take money from Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna and Cigna. Something to think about. Notice how he just glosses over, well, yeah, you know, they set some of the rules. Like, that's not something to gloss over about. I don't like the rules that they set, but that's not going to change. That's not going to change. You cannot sit here and pretend like these rules are not a problem. They are a problem. It is a problem. Regardless if he thinks that Marianne is the best candidate running in the Democratic primary, none of that matters when the DNC can just change the rules whenever they want. None of that matters when they say that they're going to take delegates away from her and RFK Jr. and give it to Joe Biden. None of that matters. None of that matters when they say that they're not going to let them debate Joe Biden. They've already selected their candidate. There is no primary. None of that matters, Jake. That's the problem. Let's continue.
It's not the number one problem. The number one problem is media. If Marianne Williamson got the same amount of respect and coverage in the media as Joe Biden did, Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy gets, then Marianne would be in a real contest with Joe Biden. But the media freezes her out, shames anyone who supports. Oh, she's not serious. Like, you morons are serious? You've ruined this country.
And who owns the media? The same people that own the Democratic Party. It's the same people. You don't have to look far. So that's the thing. We can blame the media as much as we want to, but it's important that we point to the people who are above them, that own the media and control the narrative and tell them what they can and cannot discuss. Cenk Uygur knows this because he worked in corporate media. He worked at MSNBC. So it's not like he doesn't realize this. That's why he started the Young Turks. Was because of the pushback that he received in reference to wanting to criticize Barack Obama on some of his foreign policy and domestic policies. And MSNBC wasn't trying to have that. So that's why he left, and that's why he created the Young Turks, where he could talk freely about those things. So it's like, yes, we get it. The media is not being fair to all these political candidates. Totally get it. But they're owned by the same people that own the Democratic Party. Got to make the connection.
But yes, when you get to a general election and somebody's sitting at 3% and the other two guys are sitting at 40%, well, brothers and sisters, I love you, but there is a reality that you are, in fact, taking a vote that would be against Donald Trump, and you're putting it in a category that is not going to win, and you all know that. I'm not saying today.
And you telling people to vote for Marianne or RFK Jr. while they are running in the Democratic Party as primary challengers, you are also putting people in a category that you know they're not going to win. You know the DNC is not going to let Marianne win. You know they're not going to let RFK Jr. in. Cenk's trying to make it seem like all you got to do is come out and vote. There's a thing called superdelegates. That's why we need to get away from the Democratic Party. Get out of that. Get out of that. At the end of the day, they have the final say when it comes to a primary. Do people not get this? Do people not understand that Bernie Sanders, regardless of getting every county in West Virginia, the superdelegates at the end of the day were the ones that made the decision, decided to give it to Hillary Clinton? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many people come out and support and vote for Marianne or RFK Jr. in the Democratic primary. The superdelegates at the end of the day have the final say, and they are just as much corrupt and just as much controlled as the entire freaking party. By the same establishment that Cenk told you earlier in this interview that you need to push back against.
day. I'm saying if you get to election day, and the polling still shows that, and don't give me this crap about, I don't believe in polling. I think 3% could magically turn into 51%. But if on that day, your candidate's definitely not going to win, why would you help Trump? Why? Why would you help him?
Well,
it just makes
your candidate is also not going to win. So you see what's happening here? And this is exactly what I told you they would do. TYT at the end of the day is going to tell you to support Joe Biden, or if they replace it with Gavin Newsom, they're going to tell you to support that person. And this is exactly why the progressive movement didn't succeed, because they never held the line. If the answer is just to turn it over to the establishment that they told you to fight back against, then there's never going to be any progress in this so-called progressive movement. You'll always end up caving to the establishment. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and it's a waste of resources. And we don't have a lot of resources on the left. And JP and I have talked about this earlier. The left has little resources. We don't have a lot to go around. They got a lot of resources on the right, boo. They have a lot of money on the right. We ain't got it like that on the left. But people are wasting their money on bullshit like this. Bernie Sanders raised over $100 million. And where did it go? If it was really about helping the people, why not raise $100 million and build clinics in some of these neighborhoods that are run down? Why not take that $100 million and build homes for people if you're really about helping the people?
no rational sense to
Let me ask you this, Cenk. Why would the Democratic Party ever stop? You don't want to characterize it as rigging. I will. Rigging the primary, disallowing a primary. Why would the media ever stop putting its finger on the scale the way that it does? If voters ultimately validate that behavior by continuing to vote blue no matter who, no matter how bad the Democratic Party gets, and no matter how corrupt the DNC is, when does it stop?
Yeah, it stops when we win the goddamn primary. And by the way, that's all. That's
There you go. There's your answer, folks. It stops when we win the primary. You are not going to win the primary with all those other forces at play. You're not going to win the primary in a party that is corporate and is controlled unless that progressive candidate sells out and becomes a part of the establishment. It's just, I'm sorry, this is a waste of money and a waste of resources. We got to stop this. I've been telling you guys this for a while. But people who still believe, well, let's just go and do it and try and then have you removed these donors? Have you removed corporate money from electoral politics? Do we have free, publicly financed elections? Until that is the case, for the people like Crystal and Kyle that push back and say, don't do third party because we don't have ranked choice voting. Why the fuck are y'all still trying to run people in the Democratic Party as a progressive and we don't have free, publicly financed elections? As long as the corporate money is attached, nothing is going to change. So the Democratic Party isn't going to change for us. Those people who are running as so-called progressives, they're going to change for the party.
It's impossible. No, it's not. Bernie came this close in 2016, and he came this close in 2020. He won the first 3 states. And who stopped him? Was it the Democratic Party that stopped him? No, it was corporate media that then heaped tons of negative coverage on Bernie. Can we get past corporate media? Of course we can. I know it's super hard, and that's their wall that's meant to keep us out, right? But look at us. You're doing it on Rising. We're doing it on Young Turks. And all of us are getting past it by having these conversations and having it reach the American people. Can a progressive win a primary? Absolutely.
Let me pause here for a second. So Cenk is lying. Bree's going to correct him. Cenk is lying here. You know why? He's telling you that the reason why Bernie didn't win is because of mainstream media. Did mainstream media prevent Bernie from winning in Nevada, New Hampshire, also Iowa, which we found out later on? Did mainstream media prevent Bernie from winning in those states? No, it didn't. Yes, mainstream media was a factor and there were smears, but actively there were Democratic key playmakers who stepped in to make people step down. And that was Barack Obama. And Barack Obama also wanted Bernie to step down. He called him too. How are you going to sit here and pretend like these things weren't happening behind the scenes when it was actually being told right in front of our face? It's not just because of the media. It's also because there are Democrat powers at play that may no longer, be in office anymore, but they are still very much involved. And they're turning the wheels behind the scenes. That is a Barack Obama. And there are many more like him.
But we need to have progressives who try and who bring us together on economic issues like Bernie did in 2016. And then I guarantee you victory. That's also what the book is about. I guarantee you victory in 2028.
Jen, you don't think that the Democratic Party played a role in Obama calling the leading candidates, including Pete Buttigieg, who at that point had done better than Joe Biden, and asked him to drop out after the South Carolina win? You don't think that that's evidence that the Democratic Party is willing to do whatever it takes to consolidate around a non-progressive candidate?
Brianna, I don't disagree with you 1%. That's not what I'm saying. I know Obama did that. I know that the so-called moderate Democrats, who are actually corporate Democrats, coalesced. By the way, Elizabeth Warren has done many great things in her career. You cannot wipe that away. But her not coalescing with Bernie, both in 2016 and critically in 2020, cannot be forgiven. It was just when they coalesced.
But that was on purpose. And that's what I want people to understand. The way that Cenk talks about this, Elizabeth Warren choosing not to drop out Super Tuesday, that was on purpose so that Bernie would not get more support.
We have to coalesce. Anyways, but Brianna, what I'm saying is that was not the critical factor. Obama can get all of the corrupt Democrats together and all the corporatists together, and they can go, whoa. But if the media doesn't then smear Bernie and doesn't elevate Biden, it doesn't work. It's the media that's the critical part. The Democrats try to rig elections, but if the media didn't play along, that plot would not have worked at all. Bernie would have won the 4th primary state, and it would have been over.
Bernie Sanders would have never won South Carolina. And as someone who lived in South Carolina, I'm going to go ahead and debunk that. Cenk does not understand how politics, particularly in the Democratic Party, works in South Carolina. Jim Clyburn is very much beloved by a lot of people in South Carolina, particularly the African-American community. Don't ask me why. I never figured it out. But what Cenk doesn't understand is even without the media, all it takes is for someone like a Jim Clyburn to call this church, that church, this fraternity, this sorority, and tell them we voting for Joe Biden. You don't need mainstream media to do that in South Carolina. Does he not understand how some of the most prominent figures, particularly in the African-American community, influence electoral politics? Does he not understand the power of the Black church? The Black sororities, the Black fraternities? Jim Clyburn got all those people on speed dial, boo. He don't need mainstream media to do that. This is the piece that I think is especially important, that I think that a lot of times some of the other, like the white leftist channels, they don't really understand. They don't understand how this works in the Black community. So I'm explaining it to you right now. Some of the people who are in big with those fraternities and those sororities, and particularly in the Black church, they already got the support from those organizations. And sometimes that's all you need. So if you have the support from those organizations, it doesn't matter what mainstream media is telling people in South Carolina. They're going to listen to what Jim Clyburn tells them to do. And the churches and the fraternities and sororities, they know Jim Clyburn better than they know Bernie Sanders. So if Jim Clyburn says you're going to support Joe Biden, not this Bernie Sanders, that's what people are going to do. That's what Cenk doesn't understand. I said it early on in 2020 when Bernie started to run in the primary, and I told my friends, Bernie Sanders is not going to win South Carolina. I lived there. I know. Let's go on.
We were so close. My problem with progressives in Congress is we got near the goal line, and now they're going backwards. And they're going, oh, corporate Democrats, we bow our heads. We all endorse Joe Biden. Are you nuts? What are you endorsing Joe Biden for? He's a terrible candidate. He's a weak candidate. He's going to lose. He's not very progressive. And you endorse him without getting anything in return? Don't you know even elementary politics? Use your leverage, for Christ's sake. Guys, you've got to trust me on the numbers. We're going to win these primaries. And mainstream media gets weaker by the day, and we get stronger by the day. Those primaries are ours. It's just like even today, why don't we have a more forceful primary against Biden? Because while the media whines and complains about Biden, the minute that anybody steps in the race, they go, "How dare you put your head to the leader?" If you're a Democrat and you're a progressive, are you nuts listening to corporate media? No, do not ever listen to corporate media. Their job is to lull you back into sleep and make sure that you love the status quo and that you obey corporate rule. Do not do that. Go and fight in the primaries. It is not at all too late. Look, if these are the only choices we have, voting for Marianne Williamson in the primary is the biggest no-brainer a progressive should ever have. There's no reason in the world to vote for Biden. She's both a stronger candidate and a more correct candidate.
No reason in the world to vote for Joe Biden, but he's already told you in the general, if it's between, Biden and Trump, that's who you should vote for. You see, this is why the progressive strategy is so weak.
Jake, let me ask you this before we go, and I'm sure you get into some of this in your book. I think you're so correct to rail against the mainstream media, the corporate media, and the choices that they make. And obviously we're part of a corporation, so I guess I can't say we're not corporate media, but we try to platform and celebrate alternative narratives like your own. But let me ask you this, because you went after Jimmy Dore a little bit a minute ago. I've noticed that in a lot of these independent and alternative media spaces, voices we've featured on the show before, people who got big by having very pro-Bernie Sanders audiences and messages, have had, if not a right-wing drift, I'm not sure that's in the direction of progressivism, or it's not in the direction of normal Bidenism either. It's in a direction, I think, of being more open to the right, people whose audiences, I think, have that perspective, like Glenn Greenwald's audience, Russell Brand's audience. We're going to be talking about Russell Brand later today for anyone, watching this right now. That kind of thing. How does that square with your thesis on the inevitable takeover of progressivism?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. Number one, people are getting so frustrated with the Democratic Party because they almost never deliver that they're looking for alternatives. I mean, look, as a meta issue, that's why Trump won in 2016 in the first place. The country is so deeply anti-establishment, except no one on TV will ever tell you that, because they are the establishment. They're not going to come on TV and go, "Hey, by the way, country, I'm going to end the gaslighting here. It turns out you guys all hate us." They're not going to say that, okay? So that is the absolute reality here. So, but when you get into the Jimmys of the world, there's audience capture and there's financial interests, and then some have just lost their minds, in my opinion, okay? And so, for example, Jimmy does a video that's pro-vaccine. It doesn't get a lot of views.
We're going to move forward because that's the COVID stuff. And we're actually going to get to the force the vote discussion.
Friends, what I do think that you're accurately describing a psychological phenomenon where if people are getting a lot of criticism and pushback, some of which they perceive to be bad faith, there is an inclination to spend more time with people who have been nicer. I'm not saying that's a moral choice, but it is an obvious psychological outcome. And does that mean that people within the left community should perhaps extend more grace to each other so that that doesn't actually happen? And the second, I would just want to ask you about, similar accusations, I feel I would be remiss not to bring up, that have been made about your network, Young Turks, about the $20 million of Katzenberg money that some people have argued changed the direction of TYT's coverage in a more liberal and less left direction.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll take it one at a time. Should people show each other more grace on the left? Absolutely. At the same time, you notice a phenomenon. It's okay to point it out. So it's okay for us to point out what Jimmy does with his videos is super obvious. It's one thing to criticize the Democratic Party. As you can tell from this interview, I do it very regularly and very forcefully. It's another thing to say the Republicans are okay. The Republicans are not okay. The Republicans are a disaster. The Republicans are much worse than the Democrats. Okay. Now
So if you're admitting that the Democrats and the Republicans are not okay, why aren't you trying to push your audience towards getting outside of the duopoly and pushing for a third party movement in this country? Because when we talk about financial interests, and let's keep it real, to the point that he was making, we talk about financial interest because the financial interest in doing that is not great. I know, I can tell you from experience, the financial interest in telling your audience to leave both parties is not great. The financial interest in telling people to stay in the Democratic Party and continue to support them, even when they lie to the American people and that they're still establishment and you're supposed to be a progressive news network, the financial interests are great. Let's keep it real. They took $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg. And I'm going to be honest with, look, I don't see nobody trying to offer me $20 million. I don't see nobody trying to offer RBN, my Commerce RBN. I don't see nobody trying to offer us $20 million over to RBN. There's a reason for that. Look at what we talk about. They invested in you because they knew you would be a tool to keep people in the Democratic Party. They knew you would be a tool when it came to partisan politics. So think about that, people.
Now, on to the second issue. Yeah, so then people go and look around and they go, okay, well, oh, the Young Turks got 20 million investment. Okay, now here's the things people don't know. People say Katzenberg was involved, no question. The amount he has is near microscopic. And by the way, we paid the money back. So I be honest, that's breaking news. We've never told anyone that, but we did. So
a debt that was owed. Let me tell you something. $20 million is not microscopic. Most people in this country will never see $1 million in their life. Most people in this country will never make 6 figures a year. There are people in this country making less than $30,000 a year. That's just like, what? Jeffrey Katzenberg, here, but tell you what Gene Gates isn't going to tell you. You think Jeffrey Katzenberg just donated money to TYT? Jeffrey Katzenberg donated money to Nancy Pelosi. Jeffrey Katzenberg actually pushed to criminalize homeless people in Los Angeles, which not Jink, but what's the girl's name? Anna Kasparian actually supported. That's who they took money from. Don't look at me. I don't have no sponsors. And people offer, but ain't nobody ever offered me no damn $20 million. I know that much. You got to earn that money. And as he told you, they had to pay that money back.
So that has no influence on us. But most importantly, Brianna, people just make up that we went towards the right way or went towards the moderate Democrats. I mean, they call me like those that the lunatic fringe that follow Jimmy say we're establishment shills. They haven't watched one.
Notice how he uses the same vocabulary that mainstream media uses to talk about people who are further to the left, which is fringe. He's using the same vocabulary that was used to describe and actually criticize Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr., who he told you to support Marianne. He's using that same vocabulary that mainstream media uses, which is fringe. $20 million.
1 minute of the show. I mean, look at what the things I said to you before this question, right? Does it look like a 1% pro-establishment? But they will see that and go, aha, knew it, he's for Hillary Clinton. Well, look, I can't help you if you're not dealing with facts and logic. You can't show anything where we're in favor of Hillary Clinton.
Well,
no one fights harder in the primaries against corporate Democrats than TYT does, Young Turks does, and I do. I formed the Justice Democrats to fight against corporate Democrats, and we defeated them. There's nothing more practical and more real than what I did there in that instance.
I mean, I look at all the things that I've done. Did they really defeat them? They may have won the race, but in the end, those squad members ended up joining the corporate Democrats and doing what they do. Did they really defeat them in the end?
I think specifically one of the moments that I remember of TYT being characterized as no longer capturing the spirit of the Justice Democrats or what the Justice Democrats were supposed to do was the moment around Force the Vote, where there was a push for the elected squad members to take an adversarial relationship to the Democratic Party and Nancy Pelosi specifically, to withhold their votes for them the same way that we've now seen the Freedom Caucus model with withholding their votes for Kevin McCarthy at the beginning of this year, really testing the theory of how that would work and getting in return a number of concessions that I think we can all acknowledge would be amazing for the left to have achieved. And at that time, despite there being a poll that TYT put out of its audience, where a majority of the TYT audience seemed to support Force the Vote, the newscasters, the personalities on the show, were very much against it. And as I'm sure you can remember, that caused a significant rift down the left that persists in many ways. What do you say to that? I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, it's crazy. But thank you for bringing it up, because I'm happy to address it and try to clarify it the best I can. Guys, do I look like I don't want to force votes? Of course I do, right? And I tell every congressperson that's going into Congress for the first time, if they'll listen to me, I tell them, you have to create what the civil rights movement called good trouble. Now, that doesn't mean you go in wildly and flailing around doing impractical things, but it means you come up with a coordinated strategy, you then create good trouble, and then you put a spotlight on an issue where you are on the winning end of it, popularity-wise. So, for example, one of the things we did with Justice Democrats is as soon as AOC won, we did a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office. That put Green New Deal on the map, that put Sunrise Movement on the map, and in a lot of ways it reinforced Justice Democrats being on the map.
First of all, the Green New Deal came from the Green Party. AOC and Ed Markey and the rest of the Justice Democrats crowd, they co-opted something that was already created and they watered it down. That was tame compared to the legislation that the Green Party had.
I want you to take those kind of actions, but you have to actually use your mind and independent judgment as to which action to take. So Force the Vote.
Which action to take? Not with healthcare, folks.
Jimmy comes to me. Back then, we're still friends and allies. And I go, oh, look, it sounds like a pretty good idea. Okay, I definitely want to do something where we're forcing action, right? So what's your plan, Jimmy? He's like, well, we're going to force the vote and we're going to, get Medicare for all. I'm like, brother, I want Medicare for all. But you have to take steps. You have to take steps. If you go straight to Medicare for all, you have a 0% chance of it passing, and you're going to waste the power and the leverage.
Jink is gaslighting.
And who are you going to get as Speaker of the House? And he's like,
I
don't know. That's your strategy? No, I'm not going to agree with a moron who has no strategy, no plan, not at all practical. We could have forced the vote on $15 minimum wage, and we could have won that vote. But instead, the force the vote, we're like, yeah, well, you didn't do what I wanted. Okay, then I'm out. I'm not going to help you guys.
What Jink fails to explain, and I don't want to say understand because he does understand, what he fails to explain to people is that they didn't want to force the vote on anything. The squad wasn't planning to force the vote on anything. That's the problem. And he's lying about the strategy of force the vote. Those of you that watched the force the vote, I watched all of that, the town halls, all the discussions, so I knew what it was about. And then also, too, this was a strategy straight from the DSA handbook, Democratic Socialists of America, for the newbies in the chat. This was a strategy straight from that handbook. AOC's a member of Democratic Socialists of America, so are other ones. So if you have a problem with the strategy, Jink, shouldn't you have taken that up with DSA? He wouldn't do that, though.
To actually get the bills that we all want. Oh, come on, man, grow up.
No, so Jink, I would point out that Kevin McCarthy is still Speaker of the House. The issue was not whether or not Nancy Pelosi would necessarily become Speaker. The left, people
Brianna,
like yourself. Wait a minute.
Who is going to replace Nancy Pelosi? Did you guys have a candidate? Who?
Cenk, if I could, the right-wing caucus got a number of meaningful concessions. Regardless,
but that's not what we were going for, Brianna. That's exactly the problem. If they said, let's go for meaningful concessions, I would have been in. They said, we're going to get Medicare for all.
Cenk,
sure
with all
we
due
are.
respect, your characterization of what happened, I think, is reflective of the lack of grace and communication that was happening among the left at the time. And I think if people had been less motivated by their personal animosities against each other, it seemed that Jimmy Dore, you've expressed some animosity toward him several times during our short conversation here. I do think if those personal animosities weren't at play, maybe we could have been in a world where you were listening to myself, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski, other figures on the Cornel West, Chris Hedges, who were also advocating for this and who were being very clear that there were any number of demands. I wrote an article in Current Affairs that set all of this out contemporaneously, so you can go back and look, that it wasn't this idea that we were going to hold the vote and magically get Medicare for all. And to the extent that that was your presumption.
BRIAHNA, notice how he continues to interrupt her. You know, I noticed Kyle Kulinski did the same thing. This is something very common I've noticed in this space. A lot of these men, first of all, there's very few black women in the space. They really like to overtalk us. They really do. It just, the disrespect. He interrupted her at least 3-4 times now. Kyle Kulinski did the same thing when she was having that conversation with him and Crystal, the constant, as if what you have to say doesn't matter. There's this constant need to just overtalk people. Now, I want to remind you, Jink sat on and ranted for quite some time. He wasn't interrupted for the most part of all these rants that he's had while he's been on the show.
You know it was.
I do think that is a
one
real
other thing,
problem in communication on the left.
See the rudeness? You see what I'm talking about? They all have that. By the way, they all do this. This isn't just a Jink thing. I've experienced this as well. They all do it. This is how they think they can talk to you. This is really how they think they can talk to you. And another thing in reference to what Bree said about it being personal, she's right. Had it not been for the personal shit, the personality conflicts, we could have really got something here. But people let personal shit that happens in the background, and I've seen it myself, they let that get in the way of trying to start any type of movement or push for a policy or cause or any type of grassroots action. I've seen this happen multiple times. Personality conflicts. Then I don't give a fuck. You ain't got to be best friends with people. I don't really care. Ain't nobody saying you got to be their bud or their bro or their pal. But you can't come together for this one thing, which is, that was your thing. Justice Democrats was his thing. You can't come together with other people to push these people who you told us all to support and vote for, to push them to do this DSA strategy. You can't do it because I don't like this person. I don't think some of these people really want any real progress. I think some of these people like things just the way that they are. They let too many things get in the way. Too many things. Now you're in the workplace and you may not like a coworker, but you guys have been put on a team. You're not going to come to work. Let's continue.
You guys wanted at the time. Name one other concession. At the time, don't make it up now. At the time, name one other thing you guys want.
I invite you and the rest of the audience to go look at an article I wrote in Current Affairs magazine in November of 2020, in which I consulted with David Sirota and included a list of subsequent ancillary demands that he had written up in his own publication. And I linked to them and say that these are also important. The important thing is that we need to demand something in exchange for our votes. But we don't need to rehash that. Go ahead. I'll give you the last.
No, I need to say one last thing, BRIAHNA. I need to say one last thing. You guys make it sound like we're the ones who have animus. No, be clear about how this thing started. As I told you in the beginning, I said, well, that's interesting. Let's have a conversation about strategy. And the minute I said, let's have a conversation about strategy, Jimmy said that we were taking money from the CIA and Nancy Pelosi. You just mentioned David Sirota. He also attacked David Sirota. He also attacked Amy Goodman from Democracy Now! and insinuated she was working with the CIA. So then I thought, well, no, I'm not going to work with a lunatic who thinks that Amy Goodman might be working with the CIA. And second of all, I didn't start the fight. This lunatic comes in frothing at the mouth. I'm being funded by CIA and Nancy Pelosi. How are you supposed to have a rational conversation with an absolute lunatic like that? And then you guys think we started it? Are you insane?
I didn't say you started it. I don't care about the personalities. Cenk, you're talking about personalities. I'm talking about issues. All I know is that David Sirota supported Force the Vote. I had him on my podcast talking about it many times.
Really? We're going to show you if that's true or not. So he's saying that's not true about David Sirota. I have a clip to show you.
That's not true.
Yes, he did.
No,
and he
didn't.
continues to be an advocate that I value and respect a great deal. And he is as a mature person to tease away his personal feelings about human beings that he might share an idea with or a strategy with, and the underlying strategy. And I really do hope that we see more of that on the left and less of a focus on who it is that's delivering a certain kind of a message, especially if you're right, Cenk, and it's going to require a united and powerful independent media force in order to actually ever get a progressive into office. Thank you so much for joining us today.
That is very true. That's the thing is there's a lot of focus on the personalities, and I've noticed that as well, and it's really annoying. Like, you can't organize a rally without people being like, you can't talk to that person. I don't want to be there. But what did David Sirota say? Let's pull this up. Shout out to Neoliberal Tears, because Neoliberal Tears has been doing the damn thing. This is just a take back. So Neoliberal Tears found this. Should Medicare for all be forced to a floor vote? Listen.
To me, what's frustrating is, okay, we force a vote, they go back into the caucus, but there's not a single progressive who would run against Pelosi. So where's the end game? Like, and David, not a lot of people might know this, and I don't blame them. I'm doing it sometimes publicly, sometimes I'm doing it behind the scenes, but I've asked progressives to run against Pelosi. I've done it, like I said, I've done it on the show, I've done it on social media, but I've also done it behind the scenes, and no one will.
That's a lie. Shahid Buttar has run against Nancy Pelosi 3 times. I mean, none of the members of the squad live in her district, so they can't primary challenge Nancy Pelosi. But Shahid Buttar has run against Nancy Pelosi 3 times. He's been on the show multiple times to talk about his races that he's had with Nancy Pelosi.
And so should we pressure them to? Yes, okay. But are they going to do it this time around? I think there's a 0% chance. To me, what's frustrating is, okay, we force a vote, they go back into the caucus, but there's not a single progressive who would run against Pelosi. So where's the end game?
He really messed up a lot of things during Force the Vote. He told people that if they did force the vote, then Kevin McCarthy would become speaker. He told, like, there's just so much stuff that I can't even get into all of it. But the thing is, and this is the point here that Neoliberal Tears also highlighted, he tries to deflect by asking Bree who progressives should nominated for speaker instead of Pelosi, missing the point on purpose because no one needed to be nominated as an alternative for the squad to have asked for something. And he's still telling that lie to people. We could have been forcing the vote for months, just like you saw the Freedom Caucus when they went back and forth about deciding whether or not they were going to support Kevin McCarthy as speaker without some type of concessions. They continued to go back and forth. We could have been doing that for months if need be. You did not have to have someone else lined up. And Cenk, he's been educated about this multiple times, and he's continuing to tell that lie. So that's very suspect. But again, this just show you, like I said, that the progressive, this is why they don't hold the line, and that's why you don't get anything. I'm gonna pull up this poll to see what you guys thought about AOC here in reference to, thank you, Eric, in reference to whether or not she should have attended. 1,282 votes. Do you agree with AOC attending the climate protests? 8% said yes, 44% said no, 7% said I'm not sure, and 40% said don't care one way or the other. And by the way, I appreciate the people who say that they're not sure, because sometimes people aren't willing to admit that. So I understand, but I definitely appreciate that. So thank you for being honest with me. Quick announcement. There is a Peace in Ukraine rally October 3rd in Washington, D.C. I will be attending that event. I'll be covering that event. It is on a Tuesday night, so I will be live Tuesday night from D.C. So I'm very excited about that. If you're interested in attending, the urgency of pursuing peace in Ukraine, that's featuring Dr. West, Claudia de la Cruz, Lee Camp. It's hosted by Medea Benjamin and Eugene Perrier. Again, that's October 3rd, 7 p.m. ET in the True Reformer building. RSVP to attend in person or online. I will be there in person, and he's registered here. I'll just put the link in the chat so you guys can sign up. Whoops, that's for media. Sorry. Whoopsie. I'll let Eric figure this out. I suck at this. I'm sorry. But again, like I said, Peace in Ukraine, October 3rd. I will be there. Hope to see you there if you're able to attend. If not, you can attend online. And then Eric, when I finish this last one, we can figure out where that I forgot where I put the link, but the link to sign up is here as well. And then also another announcement before I forget, you guys were asking me to add new merch. So I did. And I just want to show you the newbies. So if you go to my merch site, you'll already see like the original, the Sabby attire with the logo. That's still there, obviously. And now you'll see new ones, which is make it make sense. So these are things that I say often on the show, and you guys told me I should do it, so I did it. So make it make sense. This is a pretty cool one. You know, I say this a lot on the show. And obviously you can pick different colors. There's banana, navy, and it's like this for all of them, by the way. So there's make it make sense has been added. You can get hoodie, crew sweatshirt, long sleeves, classic unity. I also added follow the money. So again, the person who told me to do this, thank you for the idea, because I never thought about doing this. So I did follow the money. That's one of the things I say on here a lot too. And again, you can get different colors if you wanted to. And again, there's different types of, like there's hoodie, there's crew neck shirt. You guys know how this works. I don't need to explain everything. And then I also added, so there's make it make sense, follow the money, and I added general strike now. That's actually, you know what? I'm gonna get that one. This one I am gonna get pretty soon, because the general strike now I think is needed. So again, there's different colors. I like the yellow. I think it stands out more. General strike now. And then again, you can get that one. There's the sweatshirts. Yeah, I do this for all of them, different styles and different colors that you can select. And then I think I showed you guys Keep Up the Fight. If I didn't, correct me, but I thought I showed this one. Keep Up the Fight is I do have this one. I'm going to wear it one night. That's probably one of my faves, the Keep Up the Fight one. And there's also the Keep Up the Fight mug. And again, you can get different colors. Case Study QB was the first one to get that one. I should probably look and see like which ones people actually like. There's the classic anime, Sabby anime t-shirt, sipping the tea. And then there's also the General Strike mug. You can get the two-tone mug, or you can get the plain General Strike mug. Actually, I might get this instead of the t-shirt. So this is cool. So you can change the color of the handle. So General Strike now. I like that. And these designs were made by my sister. So my sister has done all of these except for Keep Up the Fight. Someone else did that one for me. But oh wait, and actually Echo J did this one, the Sabby anime. My sister did all the other ones. So I think that's all the new ones. Yeah, and there's the Keep Up the Fight. And that's the mug I have here. You guys were asking, Keep Up the Fight. That's the one I have in my hand. And I think that's pretty much it. And there's the hats at the end. Yeah, but I just wanted to announce that. I told you guys, because I said I would add those sayings that you told me to add. So I did add those. And yeah. Kay Kay said, I love my t-shirt. Thank you, Case. Yay. All right, guys, we are going to do call in tonight. I'm going to take a quick break. Eric's going to take over here for a second. I will be back in a jiff.
All right. How's everybody doing on our Tuesday? We're at Sabby Come Back. I'm trying to turn down my mic so it doesn't come in too hot here. I think that's a pretty good level. All right. Yes, we are doing call-in tonight. This is, if people don't know, this is the part of the show where we give our Sabrina a little bit of a break before we jump into call-in. Let me put in, all right, I'm putting the call-in link in the chat if people want to get a head start. So you can do call-in on your browser. You can do the call-in app on your smartphone and search for Sabby Sabs. and join the conversation. We want to hear what you think. In fact, we can show it here, but tonight, Russell Brand accused and more. So you can talk about that. You can talk about other things, basically anything you want. So let's hit a few of these chats. Thanks for the super chat. Alan Paulson. Cenk is not a progressive. He is like Ryan Grimm that runs interference when it comes to people versus the establishment. And Lana thinks he's going to try to run for office again. Yeah, we'll see. It didn't go so well for Cenk last time. And yeah, I think I think controlled opposition is a good description for Mr. Uyghur there. It's part of the way the whole system works is that you not only have like the back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, but then on both sides you also have kind of fake oppositions in both sides. So you have these so-called progressive Democrats who are not really progressives. I like to call them faux-gressives. And and on the right side with these Tea Party types and other types, they're not real opposition either. And so that's part of the system of the narrative management, is that you not only have left and right, but you also have fake opposition and controlled opposition. You notice the thing that they never talk about is the billionaires, is the big money that's really controlling both parties. And I want to hit a couple of chats on the old Rockfins. Let's swap that in here. Thanks for this paid comment on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. So much for pushing Biden left, who is fear-mongering about thirds who haven't won the Electoral College vote since '68, until they do this whole thing of causing GOP to win by voting third must go. Also, FYI, he started TYT before he was on MSNBC. And I think we got another one under here. Yeah. And thanks very much for this tipped comment on Rockfin, Ted Sawyer. Thanks for that. All right, so we'll be going into call-in soon. Yeah, we keep waiting for call-in to die. They say that they're gonna like change to locals, but call-in seems to keep working, so we'll keep doing it. I'll throw the link in the chat again. Sabby will probably pin it, but yeah, so Cenk in there shouting down BRIAHNA was quite something. I mean, it's clear that he just can't control himself, and it's definitely not a good look. And it really kind of shows you what kind of person he is. On the new merch, I certainly, speaking of the new merch, I certainly like the one that's follow the money. That's always a big one for me. Yeah, Dwayne gets it. Faux-gressives, yep. And yeah, like if you start focusing on the money, that's when things become clear. It's like if you're looking at like the squad in Congress, and you're like, why aren't they fighting more? Why isn't Bernie, fighting more? And it's because the real story is that both parties are really just serve the same interests. And Cenk was talking about the corporate media, and the problem is the media. Well, I mean, the media is also paid by is owned by the same people, the same billionaire class. It trickles down, and so you'll have one way you can think of it is that if there was someone in media who really went at hard at the billionaires and they were always attacking them, I mean, you think they would get the job, when it comes to being an anchor or a commentator or someone who comes on. I mean, they couldn't even let Cenk be in there, and he wasn't even, that huge of a lefty. And then we also have this Russell Brand stuff, and you have TYT. You have YouTube just being judge, jury, and executioner, and just saying, Russell Brand's channel is demonetized. And I saw some people, maybe one commenter, but saying that, they didn't censor him, they just demonetized him. Well, I mean, if you're making your living, if a big part of your income is coming from YouTube and the monetization, and they demonetize you, well, I mean, that's going to have an effect on what you say and what you do, and it is censorship. And it really just comes down to systemic stuff. If things are favoring, things that the huge corporate interest, the billionaire class, the MIC, the bankers, if these are all things that they're cool with, then you're allowed to say it. And if you're saying things that they're not cool with or goes against their interests, well, that's when the whole system starts working against you and starts pushing down on what you're saying. And it's about the money. If a commentator is going against their bottom line, then they're going to get the Russell Brand treatment, right?
That's how it works, unfortunately. Oh, by the way, if they've already decided to prevent him from receiving ad revenue, the takedown of the videos is only just a minute away.
Here they come. All right, and we'll see you in the call-ins.
Yeah, let's do it, son. All right, tonight, call in episode 126, Russell Brand accused and more. Let's chat about Russell Brand allegations and more news. That link is pinned to the top of the chat. Hope to see you guys on call in. We'll go ahead and head on over there. Tomorrow's Wednesday. No show tomorrow night. I'll be back on Thursday. But until then, have a good night. Keep up the fight.